The Intelligent Money British GT Championship rolls into Belgium and the magnificent Spa-Francorchamps circuit for round number 4 of the 2021 season. The sun is shining for now, although there are grey clouds around and maybe a hint of rain forecast for the very near future. It's going to be a fascinating 2 hours of racing here as we move now into the halfway point of what is becoming immediately a thrilling 2021 campaign. The track looks absolutely splendid. The grid is starting to form now. The atmosphere starting to build around this place that really does still capture that same magic that people have spoken about for decades here at Spa. We really missed this place in 2020 when, for fairly obvious reasons, we weren't able to make it over here. Great to be back, though, in 2021, and let's hope that this, once again, continues to be a regular feature on the calendar. Qualifying yesterday has given us quite a few questions. In fact, there were quite a few questions even before we got to qualifying, with drivers not able to get here, accidents in practice sessions that have unfortunately counted a few cars out of the running. But what we do have is a really competitive grid that I think is going to provide us with a brilliant couple of hours of entertainment here this afternoon. It's a Lamborghini on pole position, the Barwell Motorsport number 63 of Leo Machitsky that he shares with Dennis Lind. They were pretty unstoppable yesterday, and Leo Machitsky will be taking the start of the race from pole position. His co-driver Dennis Lind is down on the grid though, and with him is Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, Dennis Lind here with me right now. We saw yesterday just how happy Leo was in the car when he came out in qualifying. Dennis, seeing what your teammate did yesterday in qualifying and then you having to go out straight after, the pressure was really on, but you're sitting on pole here, and after the last round you really want to win, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious we want to win soon. Leo did an amazing job in qualifying, but he has been quite strong here during all practices, so we were in good form for qualifying, and he just pulled it off and did a good job.
Now, no success penalty for you two, which means you can really just get up the road.
Yeah, that's the plan. I mean, we made a plan with Leo is that he just get out ahead, make a good gap, and then we just cruise home, basically.
Is there any nervousness from Leo about that first corner, getting through it?
We had a small chat, but no, not really. He's done many race starts. He's been on international grids for many times, so he's a very experienced starter. So I'm sure he'll be doing just fine.
Yeah, best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dennis Lind, one of the stars of the show as always. We didn't get to see him at Donington though 2 weeks ago. Those of you who tuned in for our most recent round will know that it was eventful, and unfortunately Leo Machitsky was out at the very first corner after contact with Michael Igoe, who had himself been tipped into a spin. Let's hope they don't have a repeat of that here today. Alongside them on the front row are, is one of our joint championship leaders. Andrew Howard with Johnny Adam shares the points lead after 2 podiums so far this year with Jelmer Berman and Ian Loggie, who have had, unsurprisingly, very similar results. However, not with Andrew Howard is Johnny Adam. Unfortunately, Johnny has not been able to travel over. He is stuck back in the UK observing COVID-19 protocols, and so with him instead is Ross Gunn, who Andrew has competed with on a number of occasions in the past, and that car is still quick, but of course for Howard, joint points leader with that car there, the number 6 Ram Racing Mercedes, which starts third. So we've got all of the big hitters really in the GT3 Championship right at the pointy end. This is another one of those. Adam Ballon and Sandy Mitchell, they start 4th for Barwell Motorsport, and they are 3rd in the championship. It's all remarkably tight at the front, just 15 points covering the top 4 teams in the championship. In GT4, it's been all about Century Motorsport, though. Will Burns dominating the championship with his teammate Gus Burton, and Will is down there with Bryn.
Yeah, Will, we're just introducing you, saying dominating the championship. It has been a huge story with this car, hasn't it? So strong.
Yeah, well, all the guys at Century Motorsports are doing a fantastic job. We probably necessarily haven't got the best equipment, but we've just got a good driver pairing, so we're just trying to stay out of trouble and just get along to the end of the race. Obviously at Donington there was a lot of accidents in that, so I just stayed out of trouble, and that's how we got that result. So we got pole position now, which is obviously an awesome result. We got a bit of a big time penalty to try and make up, so I'm going to keep my head down and go for it.
Yeah, what is the huge plan between you and Gus? Is it a case of just get your head down, get going up the track as fast as you can, and then try and make up that 20 seconds? Is that all you can do?
Yeah, that's all I can do really, and just try and keep on the momentum. Sorry, I've got the radio going on inside here. Yeah, keep the momentum and just try and pull the gap, and hopefully there's no safety cars.
We saw a bit of a smash with your teammate, not you into your teammate, but your teammate yesterday going into the barriers there. That's the other car, your number 9 car, Chris and Andrew. How is that car faring at the moment, do you know?
Yeah, it was all fine. The guys did a good job repairing it. It was a bit of a hefty impact, but they qualified well, so they had a good qualifying result, and it all seems good. So I think they'll be fighting from wherever they are, making their way up to the front.
Great stuff. Well, we can't wait to see what happens. It's always exciting, GT4 and GT3 here at Spa.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, it is. Spa is always one of the highlights of the season, but Century Motorsport, much as I agree that Will Burns and Gus Burton have been doing a brilliant job, so to have Chris Salkeld and Andrew Gordon-Colebrook in the sister car, I can't agree with the fact that they don't have the strongest car, because that BMW has been almost impossible to beat this year, and they're looking to try and continue that form again here today. Back to the GT3 grid, meanwhile. Fifth on the grid, we've got Balf Motorsport, and then this car sixth. It's been another one of those weird weekends, really, where Michael Igoe and Phil Keane for WPI Motorsport just haven't really been at the races. Their sixth isn't bad, but there are, after all, only the 8 GT3 cars entered. So Phil Keane there giving some very last-minute advice to Michael Igoe. Phil is a very relaxed character at the best of times, and he needs to try and instill some of that relaxed nature now into Michael, who, as I touched upon earlier on, didn't make it round turn 1 at Donington last time out either. In the GT4 Championship, Century Motorsport, as I said, are leading by quite some way with a 1-2 in the championship. We haven't necessarily seen the best of the Rocket RJN McLarens, though. Alan Vallant is at the wheel of one of them, and Bryn's got him now.
Yeah, he's sort of at the wheel. He's standing outside of the car at the moment, Alan. Now, you've not had a great start to the season with that DNF in the last round and the 8 in the previous round there. So what are you hoping for this weekend?
I think we have a good starting position this time. Our race pace is looking good, so I really hope that we can finish on the podium this time. We really need a good result. I think we deserve it now, and the team deserves it, so really hoping that all went well.
So podium's the ambition. We'll keep an eye on it. Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, Alan Vallant then, one of the McLaren Driver Development Programme members, really looking to try and turn their season around, and the McLarens do look good in GT4 this weekend. So, Andy McEwan then up here in the comms box. We've met birthday boy, Bryn Lucas, who is celebrating his birthday at the best place possible, I think, Spa-Francorchamps. Alongside me in the box, though, David Addison. And David, a lot has happened since you last joined with one of these races at Brands Hatch at the season opener, and I think a lot's going to happen over the next 2 hours as well.
It's a circuit that always produces drama. It is a weekend that has produced drama from the moment the entry list was first revealed, as you've been saying, with Johnny Adams' travails. We've had cars in the walls, in the pits. But what we do have is an ultra-competitive grid at one of the best circuits in the world, with the best beer on tap and the most fickle of weather conditions,
yes,
which always has a part to play. And if you walk up and down the pit lane at the moment, there are lots of team managers who, when you say, and what's the weather going to do, they all get nervous and they all get edgy because they are desperate to get through this without yet another downpour. And I'm not convinced that they will.
No, there is quite a chance of rain at around 1 o'clock local time. It is 1:45 now, and then there's an even higher chance from 2 o'clock onwards. So if we do get rain midway through the race, that will turn the race on its head, because we have this mandatory pit stop window where everyone has to come in and make your driver changes and tyre changes and whatnot. For GT3, that is we're from 62 minutes into the race. From GT4, it's just before the 1 hour mark. But of course, if the weather changes and you look at that sky and you think,
what do you mean if?
That could happen, that could very well happen, that will require an extra pit stop, and then there are a whole other set of regulations for the teams to get their head around. What it boils down to, though, David, is, are you brave enough? Are you going to gamble on staying out for an extra 10 minutes on slicks when it starts raining?
Let's wait and see, because part of the answer to that is where you are in the traffic, where you are in the classification, where your big rivals are, and indeed where your pit stop is relative to the weather. If you can get the rain to come round about the hour mark so it coincides with your pit stop, that makes life a lot easier. But it's where you've got to think about an extra stop that it gets really difficult indeed. Leo Machitsky starts on pole position. He knows this place like the back of his hand. If he can keep out of trouble at turn 1, they are in a really confident mood down at Barwell, and they need to be, because this car's got to be recycled, as has the number 1, for 24 hours of racing. They're testing on Tuesday afternoon. The last thing Lemmer's team now needs is any dramas whatsoever. But Leo Machitsky versus Andrew Howard versus Ian Loggy versus Adam Ballin in the opening stint. It's going to be good, because they are quick. it's wrong to call them AMs in a sense, but they are quick bronze graded drivers.
Yes, absolutely. Here is the grid then. As we've said, it's Barbar Motorsport on pole position. Leo Machitsky starts with Andrew Howard, joint championship leader, alongside him. Row number 2 then is where we find Ram Racing and Ian Loggy in the number 6 Mercedes that he'll hand over to Jelmer Berman later. It's third on the grid, Adam Ballon, who had a crash here 2 years ago in the race, hoping not to repeat that from 4th. Stuart Proctor, both of the Proctors qualified well yesterday, and Stuart Proctor there nearly running into the back of Adam Ballon, I think. They've got the WPI car for company started by Michael Igo. Mia Fluid had a spin in qualifying, but to start 7th. And Richard Neary, we'll get into that story in more depth later, but they come from the back of the GT3 grid again. Will Burns on pole for Century Motorsport in GT4. John Ferguson's Toyota, though, has looked very, very pacey all weekend. They're second on the GT4 grid. Silverstone winner Matt Topham is third for Newbridge Motorsport. And then it's the McLaren of Ashley Marshall, one of the standout performances from qualifying yesterday, 4th on the GT4 field. Then it's Michael Benyaya and Will Moore. They had an electrical issue, a battery-related issue in morning warm-up. Hopefully they've got that sorted in the Academy Mustang. Chris Salkeld, lower down than you'd expect, in the number 9 Century BMW, moved up to a silver-graded driver this weekend. Alongside him, Harry Hayek for Team Rocket RJN. And then at the back, Richard Williams in the Stella Motorsport Audi and Mark Sansom in the Assetto Motorsport Ginetta G56. There are success penalties to be added on, of course, for those that were on their respective class podiums last time. So GT3 winners last time, Team Ava Racing have 20 extra seconds to serve. Ram Racing's Ian Loggy and Jelmer Berman 15. And Andrew Howard 10 extra seconds in GT4. The 57 BMW on pole has 20 extra seconds to serve. And Chris Salkeld and Andrew Gordon Colebrook 15 seconds for them. I mentioned the Nearys as well, 8th on the grid for the number 8 car. Well, they came from 10th to win last time at Donington Park. They have had an eventful weekend. Sam Neary crashed in free practice 1 coming out of Lake Com, so the left-hand side of that green Mercedes is rather second-hand. Then in qualifying, Richard Neary qualified second in his portion of the session. Sam Neary got in, had 1 lap disallowed, a quick lap at that as well, disallowed for track limits. And then David had this really odd moment going into last source where there was a failure at the front of the car, and off went Sam, no lap time set.
No, and we were a bit confused at the time, thinking, why has it suddenly gone that direction? But it was this wishbone that had failed, pitched the car into a spin, and he couldn't continue in the session. We know that the Neary Mercedes, there it is, the green car going through, is a bit like Rasputin. Whatever you do to it, it always seems to bounce back. You can't quite kill it off, which is great. And it's been a great showcase for Sam Neary's ability, but they drive it hard. And this, let's face it, is a 2-hour sprint. There's no think about a pace early on. All the AMs have to be absolutely flat out. Then all the pro drivers in stint 2 have to be absolutely flat out. There are going to be a lot of cars biting curbs, and a bit of self-preservation would not be a bad thing in this race.
Yes, and then you factor in the chance of safety cars, the chance of rain perhaps. It's going to keep us on our toes, this race. I think there's your GT4 front row then. The 57 BMW, twice winners already this year, but the last time they carried a 20-second success penalty at Silverstone, they didn't make the podium, in fairness, even over a 3-hour race.
That Toyota alongside, one of the downsides in a sense to new drivers in that car is educating them into what you do in GT racing. John Ferguson is the start driver, that's the way the regulation is written. Every race is so different for him from a 10-lap Formula Ford 1600 blast. So don't worry about leading, don't worry about battling on the first few laps. Drive your race, do your lap times. We'll worry about the bigger picture in the end, and John's learning that all the time.
Let's see what happens then for round number 4 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. Through the chicane they come. Leo Machitsky on pole, Andrew Howard alongside him, who really, they both just want a clean start to this race. They face the start-finish line then. The red lights will go out, and we will be racing now for 2 hours in the Belgian countryside. Sam Neary, already Richard Neary into the back of Ian Loggy. Richard Neary spins in front of the GT4s. He's collected again. There is an enormous shunt. Mia Fluid is involved in it. So unfortunately is Matt Topham, and it has all gone wrong right from the get-go. Loggy is wounded too, and that will have unfortunately taken a number of very capable cars out of contention. The Rocket RJN number 3 car is out with damage as well. That's Michael Benyaya. Michael Igo looked like he was slow through the first corner too. That is Richard Neary's car. Matt Topham reversing out of the way. Completely unnecessary, that, quite frankly, but with a congested start, everyone wants to be on the inside into La Source. You do often get early incidents.
It's a 2-hour race. There is no excuse, is there, for driving standards like that away from the line. It is a 2-hour race. If somebody is slower ahead of you, it's a Formula 1 width circuit. It's not a narrow Alton Park Brands Hatch type circuit. There's plenty of room. There's plenty of damaged cars now. We've lost very definitely the Neri Mercedes. There is debris all over the road. We've got the safety car, as you see. It would not be a surprise if the cars now came through the pit lane while the circuit is cleared. But after Donington, Peter Daly said, you know, there isn't a driving standards issue. It was just an accident at turn 1. These things happen. We haven't even got to the start line. Wheels are ripped off cars. There are damaged cars. There's bits of car all over the road. There are at least 3 involved in that. There's the Neri Mercedes. We've seen the RJM McLaren part. There's another McLaren involved in that. Is it the Near Fluid car, I think, that was caught up in it? And Matt, Darren Turner and Topham, Aston Martin, we've seen trying to reverse away. So the safety car is called even before we get to turn 3.
And that is one of your joint championship leaders, Ian Loggy, with quite a lot of left rear damage. That car's not going much further either. He might at least be able to limp it back to the pits. And if they can get it back out later, there are points to be scored. Because there aren't going to be that many GT3 cars left. Wow. So, well, we didn't see that coming. That is fair to say. It must be said. We will, I'm sure, in good time, have a look at what happened exactly. But it was initially contact between the 2 Mercedes of Richard Neri and Ian Loggy that seemed to trigger it. And Neri's car got a long way into the air. I think it's his right rear wheel, isn't it, that had made it almost, well, a lot further to last source than the rest of the car did. And you can see there what David was talking about. The debris on the road is not going to be safe for the field to drive through.
The safety car is at pit in, so I think you'll find in a moment, as the cars come through, here's the rather badly delayed Michael Igoe, that the field will be directed towards pit in, and they'll come through the pit road. It looks as though that is, yes, that is exactly what is happening. So excellent decision by the race officials. So they will do that as the end of lap number 1, and then we'll try and piece together exactly what happened. But we know that people are out of the cars, but they're, well, we talk about the fact that that Mercedes has been well used, wheels ripped off, suspension smashed. As Watty would say, I don't know what to say, because a 2-hour race, to have an accident like that, even before they got to the first corner, when the cars are accelerating, somebody presumably was on their toes and somebody ahead wasn't. But we need to have another look at that and try and piece together exactly how you can have so much damage in a straight line.
Yes, indeed. Of course, after their win at Donington, the Neris were back into championship contention, joint 3rd in the points. That is not going to be the case now. This is good news, I guess, for some of those that survived. So you can see the order then. It's Machitsky that leads. Andrew Howard is 2nd. Stuart Proctor is 3rd, with Will Burns in a GT4 BMW 4th. But that's because half of the GT3 field were delayed and a couple of them taken out altogether in that start line shunt. So Burns is 4th, with Igoe in 5th, the next GT3 car. Let's try and dissect all of this then and see what on earth happened. So keep an eye to the pink Mercedes 2nd row and the green Mercedes row 4. Somehow these two come together, the lights go out. Oh, and Richard Neri was gone a long time before the rest of the field. That's where, unfortunately, the number 3 McLaren got some damage. Let's see, the lights go out. In fairness, I don't think he jumps it. I think he's just a lot more on his toes than the rest.
It's hard to gauge. I mean, the officials will have a look because they'll have other cameras for that. I mean, yes, it was a committed, determined start, but dare I say, that gap was always going to close. He went for a gap that was always going to narrow. If he'd have gone left around the outside, that might have done some difference, but, you know, spur of the moment, heat of the moment, all that. There's the McLaren number 3 after it's damaged. Now, this is how the Newbridge Motorsport car saw it. There's an airborne Mercedes up the road, and you've got a feel, haven't you, for Michael Benyaya, because he had nowhere to go in all of that, and Bob Neville's already lost 1 car this weekend. Now there's another one with lots of damage. Look back. There's the Mercedes, and others with just nowhere to go. If you were on the outside line, you were lucky, and if Richard Neri would have gone that way, it would have been very different. But he went for the middle, but that gap was always going to close.
Secondary contact there between the GT4 McLaren, which got into the side of Igoe, who I think then hits the number 1 Lamborghini. So that's the onboard from Igoe. He's quite slow away. And then as he goes through La Source, he's going to get elbowed out of the way, I think, by a GT4 McLaren. Wait for it. There it is. And that knocks him over into the number 1 car as well of Adam Pallen. I mean, it was all kicking off there, well and truly.
Just double-checking the documentation about this event. It definitely says on my grid sheet 120 minutes. It's definitely meant to be a 2-hour race. I know everybody wants to try and get the best position they can, but with a 2-hour race and knowing how GT3 cars don't like contact, there's going to be quite a lot to discuss, I think, in the stewards' room during, never mind after this race.
Bear in mind, and I'm not offering this as an excuse for Richard Neary by any means, but the Nearys won at Donington because of Richard Neary's lightning start. He went from 10th to 2nd in the first corner. Now, there was luck involved because he went the right way when Igo and Machitsky came together. But in his mind, he's thinking, right, I've done it once, I can do it again. He went from 10th to 3rd in his stint at Silverstone as well. So when you do that a couple of times and it works, you kind of feel like God then, don't you? You think, oh, I can do that every time.
Maybe, yeah.
But eventually your luck runs out, I guess.
I'm sure I'll have another look at it, but it still strikes me that the gap was always going to diminish. But, you know, Richard thought it was worth a gamble. It wasn't, and he has come off badly. Not necessarily the worst, because you could argue that the joint championship leaders Ian Logie and Yelmer Berman have come off really worse because they are effectively out of the race. They've made it as far as the pit lane, but there it is staying while work is done on the car. So we remain with the pit lane as part of the racetrack so that the cars don't have to go over the debris. It's been a system used here before in other races where we had a Lamborghini Super Trofeo race, for example, one year with a start line accident, and the cars come through the pit lane. So it's a very sensible way of doing it to keep the race going. Tell you who was lucky out of all that, John Ferguson in the Toyota, because the accident was kind of encroaching his way, and he had to just be a bit evasive on the outside. So that brings us effectively now down to 14 cars, and it's taken a little bit of the sting out because 2 of the quick GT3 Mercedes are no more. And yeah, it's a remarkable way to start a 2-hour race. Really, really is. Liam Machitsky then is the race leader, and let's keep an eye to how long it's going to take to clear all this up. One of the cars, in fact both of the cars, are now on flatbeds, so it's heading towards a restart, but the cars for the moment are on the flatbed truck, so they will be clear of the circuit. The sweeping has almost been done, and so it shouldn't take too long to get the track clear, and then we can be back in business. It might be that we have a full safety car lap, by which I mean over the start and finish line at a proper pace, just to get tyres up to temperature. But there, number 15, the Toyota Supra, running in GT4 in the hands of John Ferguson. Target up the road is Will Burns' BMW. So this takes us almost to the end of the first 10 minutes. I'm intrigued to see how much damage Michael Igo picked up in all of that, because he needs to fight back on the restart, doesn't he?
Yes, it was the right front corner that took a whack, but then I think the left side got into Ballon as well. Not his fault, but yeah. That's the other luckiest man at Spa, I think, Matt Topham, because I thought at first he was involved in it. His car was parked up directly behind Mia Flewitt's McLaren, but from his onboard we saw earlier, he never did make contact with anyone that I saw. So he had lightning quick reactions there to hit the brakes, pick the right line, and somehow avoid driving into the accident, because that's always the risk for the GT4s, is that if something does go wrong for the GT3s ahead of them, they're driving into whatever has occurred up the road, and that's why Peter Daly does like them to, where possible, leave a bit of a gap to the GT3s, and I did notice that wasn't really what happened at the start of this race. Right, Richard Neary, unfortunately, is out of the race. His son Sam, I'm sure, was a little concerned to see that, Bryn.
It wasn't ideal, Sam. We can't speak to your dad, but tell us from your point of view, what happened there?
Yeah, it's first of all, it's a massive shame for the whole team. You know, they got the car back out after my incident, and you know, it's just really not what we wanted to see. From what I've seen from the replays, it looked like Rich got a really good start and called the lights really well. A few people at the front didn't, so he went to the middle. And when coming up the middle, it looked like Ian just pulled out, maybe didn't see Rich, and pulled out, and that's when Rich hit his right rear left corner, I think, which sent him up into the air, which is just a massive shame.
Now we look at these races, we saw it last time out as well, we look at these races, they're endurance races, they're sort of 2 hours long. It's so important that you make it around the first corner and get out on track. So for you guys, how do you assess and how do you move forward from here? We're showing the replay right now, by the way, but how do you move on?
I think we carry on doing what we're doing. Donington it worked, and here it would have worked. You know, he was in the middle, he got a great start, he was up already 3 places before in the first corner. But it just looks like it's an unfortunate incident. You know, we need to look into it a little bit deeper. But it's just one of those things. I don't think Rich needs to change anything. I think he's been on fire this season, and that was another really good start from him. It's just a shame what's happened, but no, we'll look into it further and see what we can do.
All right, thanks very much, Sam.
Thank you.
The incident is going to be looked at after the race by the stewards. They've got a lot of angles, and certainly one of them, that forward-facing shot, showed how much Ian Logie moved to try and find a gap between the front row cars. There you could see why the gap suddenly shrunk on Richard Neary. But to an extent, you kind of expect that, don't you? Everybody's going for the same bit of tarmac to a degree.
If he'd have pulled it off, he'd have been a hero, and we've been talking about it for years, but he didn't, unfortunately. And you're right, you have to expect that there's going to be a bit of congestion up the road from you. But anyway, the end result is that Neary is out. The Rocket RJN GT3 McLaren is out. Michael Medaya in the GT4 Rocket McLaren is out. Team Rocket RJN came here with 4 cars, and unfortunately, only 2 of them running. Now, we lost one before the practice sessions even started, when the number 2 car crashed in testing on Friday, and so that car was out before we even got going. Ian Loggie's in the pits as well, by the way, David.
And the safety car will be in as well this time, so it'll be joining Ian Logie in the pits. We will go back to racing. So we've had that sort of 12-minute hiatus, really, after the start line accident. So now we can start the race proper, in a sense. So Neary so far earlier, but we almost got going properly. And we will be back in business this time. So Leo Machitsky leads the way. Andrew Howard runs second. Stuart Proctor third. Will Burns fourth, but all eyes on the red Lamborghini, I suspect now. Michael Igoe in 5th position. And let's see what he can do to get himself back into that GT3 mix. We know that Michael is a rapid driver, but he will be very, brackets Phil, brackets keen to get up through the order as quickly as he can.
2 puns in 2 sentences, David, you're on fire today. The first job for Igoe is to clear that 57 GT4 car, and the trouble is he's not allowed to do so before the start-finish line, and the GT4 car will not accelerate up to speed as quickly as the GT3s around it. So Will Burns, I'm sure, enjoying being in 4th place outright at the moment, but he's going to have to watch his mirrors immediately upon restarting the race, because that red Lamborghini, as you said, will be wanting to get through at the first possible opportunity. Also a shout-out to the Ashley Marshall-driven McLaren that is 2nd in GT4. We said they had a standout qualifying effort, 2nd place through all of the confusion for them. Also keep an eye to Adam Ballon. He's stuck down in 8th place overall, the number 1 Lamborghini, and Matt Topham, the 27, which we think is undamaged, but was seriously delayed in all of that schmozzle at the start.
Right, so the lights will be out, yes, bang on cue, and we will go racing again. So Leo Machitsky leads Andrew Howard, Stuart Proctor third, Will Burns is going to get gobbled up with all due deference by the Michael Igoe Lamborghini behind him. And behind Michael Igoe, you've got Ashley Ferguson's McLaren, then Adam Ballon, one to watch. There'll be a few sighs of relief, I suppose, in that car as well as in number 18 Lamborghini, that at least they avoided the traffic and the carnage, and they can now do battle. There's another incident involving the number 15 Toyota that is under investigation. Okay. I'll come back to you on that, but we're about to go racing.
We are indeed. Into the pit lane comes the safety car. Out of the chicane goes Leo Machitsky, and that is a good restart for the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini. He's already gapped Andrew Howard and Stuart Proctor, who will battle for 2nd over a bit of cement dust that's been laid down on the start-finish line. Michael Igoe can now pass Will Burns for position, for 4th place there, and Adam Ballon trying to do the same. Now let's keep an eye then on the red Lamborghini in 4th place. We're on board with it now. Michael Igoe, we hope, has not sustained any damage. He'll have had a bit of a chance during that safety car period just to feel the car out, weave around, put some loads into the front suspension, but now he attacks Radion at speed for the first time, not on the ideal racing line, it must be said, but touch wood, all seems okay.
Number 15 Toyota quickly is being looked at for an out-of-position start. So there's a lot going on at the start, but that might have been out of position, so that's being looked at. However, there are rather more dramatic things, such as Michael Igoe having a go at Stuart Proctor here. So the Lamborghini was 5th on the restart, it's 4th already, it's about to go 3rd. Is it Michael Igoe then crawling all over Stuart Proctor as they come down towards Bruxelles? There's a gap on the inside line. Michael Igoe thinks about it, doesn't commit to it, and elects to sit tight at least for one more corner.
Igoe was 1.3 seconds behind Stuart Proctor at the restart. By the end of the Kemmel Straight, he was underneath the fairly sizable. Rear wing of the McLaren looks to the inside there into Speaker's Corner. That's not really an overtaking opportunity, and indeed it didn't work. He bails out of it, loses momentum down the hill now. He just needs to try and set himself up, I think, for a run up through Blanchimont and into the chicane at the end of the lap.
It's not worth doing it as a risk,
No.
is it? Because you've seen what can happen. Bank the points, Michael. So with some of the grid all in strife, there's a good chance here to get some points back now as the cars accelerate their way up through the pit path. So Michael Igoe crawling all over the back of the McLaren. Up front, though, Leo Machitsky getting away from Andrew Howard. And yes, it's going to be surely a move that starts about here to finish at the chicane for Igoe.
Yeah, a good exit then through campus and into Paul Frere is essential, because now you don't even think about lifting off the loud pedal until you get right up towards the chicane. A bit wide there for Michael Igoe, but carries good momentum up the hill. He's got a bit of a slipstream as well, which will have a small effect on a flat-out section as long as this. He's in the draft, in the wheel tracks then of Stuart Proctor, who is running in third place, remember. The McLaren a bit quicker through the left-hander. The turbulent air maybe holding Igoe back, and as a result, I don't think he's quite close enough to have a go into the braking zone. No, he's not, and again, just has to wait for a slightly better opportunity. You could really see there, actually, how much Igoe struggled to follow through the high-speed left-hander at Blanchimont.
So is there a move coming up at La Source? Let's see. Over the timing line they go. Half a second between the pair of them as they break for the hairpin now. Is there an opportunity for Igoe? Yes, yes, yes. Certainly under braking. He closes right up there. Stuart Proctor hanging on then, defending that place. We've got track limits warnings coming as well. And Michael Igoe now gets really brave, coming down towards Eau Rouge, then up through Radion. If there is a gap at the foot of the hill, he might well be able to pounce and then make the move up towards Les Combes. Through they come. Stuart Proctor has a lift, understandably, because he doesn't want to be a hero and go off the road. He wants to hang on and give Son Lewis a good chance in the second stint, and Michael Igoe is right there behind him. Now the move potentially at Les Combes. Not quite close enough, though.
No, I don't think he is. They're very evenly matched in a straight line. The McLaren maybe with a slight edge over the Lamborghini, which then looks better on the brakes, as you said at La Source. He does the same thing into Les Combes, closes in, changes direction well, peaks to the inside into the final part of Les Combes. But those little half looks, they do nothing. The driver in front isn't going to just leap out of the way, and all it does is kills your momentum off the corner, and then you spend the next half lap catching back up again.
Good fight going on here, look, because number 4 McLaren of Harry Hayek has got itself onto the back of the Toyota Supra GR of John Ferguson, the Speedworks run car, and the McLaren to the inside line down towards Bruxelles makes his move. John Ferguson gives him racing room. He does not want to get involved in any battles at the moment that could jeopardise the position. They want to be fighting at the end of the second hour. So for the moment, happy with his lap times, lets the McLaren go. Andrew Howard's team, Beach Team, reporting that because the start was slow, as in the pole car, Leo Machitsky was a little bit slow away, not only did that have an effect on keeping people stuck behind him, but also there was a little bit of contact, supposedly, into the back of the Aston.
Ah, interesting.
Which might be why you've got a gap of 2.8 seconds.
Interesting. OK, we'll try and get a look at the back of the BHD and Aston Martin then, if we can. For now, GT4 battles raging on. The Academy Mustang's still running, which is positive. They stopped in the warning warm-up session with that low battery voltage that they were reporting after the session. This group being led by the number 4 of Harry Hayek then, who is running 10th place overall, but that is 5th place. Fifth place in the GT4 category. Through the right hand they go then, on board with Will Moore, the Mustang and Toyota. Two cars that make their lap times in reasonably similar ways, actually. So it'd be interesting to see. These were the two cars through practice, at least, that look the strongest in the GT4 field.
Leaders go through. 2.8 now becomes 3.3 seconds. Third is Stuart Proctor ahead of Michael Igoe, and Adam Ballon has caught up now with the fastest lap of the race. So number 1 Lamborghini of Adam Ballon becomes the next one to watch for. The timing tower just had Leo Machitsky dropping down the order. That's all to do with transponder glitches, so he's very definitely there. And interesting that Michael Igoe has plateaued now, so having tried to get onto the tail of the McLaren, he's, if anything, dropped back a little bit now, and Stuart Proctor looking more secure in that third place.
Yeah, Proctor's warming to the challenge now, isn't he? On the previous lap, like you say, he was a couple of tenths quicker than Igoe, and Ballon quicker than the pair of them. There are the gaps at the front there. Machitsky goes through, very much still in the lead. Andrew Howard second, 3.4 seconds back. Proctor then was 1.8 seconds back at the line. That's third, fourth, fifth. Proctor, Igoe, Ballon going through. And then, unfortunately, that is it for the GT3s. Will Burns still leads in GT4 as Igoe once again closes in on Stuart Proctor. Now, Bruxelles is a possible place to throw one up the inside, but Proctor takes the nice early apex, very early, in fact, gets a bit of dust thrown up, then runs wide in the middle. Igoe sees the gap on the inside, but the exit speed for the McLaren is better, and still, Igoe cannot find a way through.
So he's getting frustrated now, Michael Igoe, because in real terms, the gap to the leading Lamborghini is opening up to nearly 6 seconds, and he's not able to stay on the tail of the McLaren. This is one of the beauties of GT3 and the balance of performance, that you can see where certain cars work. Do you need power? Do you need aero? Well, ideally a bit of both, but the McLaren then, with that massive rear wing on the back of it, looks good in a straight line, fending off the attack of the Lamborghini behind. Now in GT4, you've got Toyota versus Ford versus BMW going on here. John Ferguson is under attack. He's running in 9th place overall, just ahead then of Will Moore. Chris Salkeld is not that far behind in the BMW, and then there's Richard Williams in the Audi, so showing the great variety in the GT4 battle. 4th place battle this is for then in GT4, and it is, as you said, Toyota, Ford, BMW, Audi, and they are pretty evenly matched, it must be said. 3 front-engine cars, of course, at the head of this group, so they might have the slight edge through the high-speed corners, but through the technical sections, that is where that Audi, which was so strong at Silverstone a few weeks ago, remember, that is where it will excel. But so they make their way now down towards Stavelot, or towards Campus, as it's now called. The first of these right-handers over the curbs, and nothing between them. Yes, Campus should be a good corner for an Academy Motorsport car, shouldn't it? I see what he did there. Yes, indeed. But right now, it's the grunt coming out of the corner where it works for Will Moore. John Ferguson just fending him off as they make the run up towards Blanchimont, but all of those wild horses under the bonnet of the Mustang prancing merrily as they try to get up alongside the Supra. But again, you see the Toyota's got bags of grunt, just extends that margin by a length, but Will Moore is on the limit coming through Blanchimont. There's half a gap on the inside for the chicane. John Ferguson's got other ideas about this. To the outside line goes the Mustang. John Ferguson's not afraid to get out his elbows in a battle. His line into the chicane ain't perfect, and now Will Moore lines up on exit. If he can't get the job done, he'll be on the outside line, and the car hesitates coming off the corner, and all of a sudden he's in jeopardy from the BM. Yes, which pulls alongside him then down to last source. This is Chris Salkeld on the outside line. He's going to try and force the issue here, and he does succeed in doing so. He's very late on the brakes though, dives to the inside for a horrifying moment. I thought he was heading for the right rear corner of the Toyota. That's happened before, remember, those two have made contact, but thankfully avoiding it on this occasion. And of course the Mustang last time out had contact with the Toyota as well. I think the Audi is the only car in this group that John Ferguson hasn't got intimate with yet. Well, that's torn it then, hasn't it, really? That's tempting fate. Richard Williams in the Stella Motorsport Audi R8 at the back of the queue. Now, Chris Salkeld is on his toes. He gets the toe, and so now pulls up, gets the draft off the Supra, makes that move around the outside line. Here comes Will Moore then. He also follows the BMW that's punched a big hole for him through the air, and that means that the Toyota drops 2 places, make that 3 places. John Ferguson almost driving on eggshells here, trying to keep out of trouble. He's... I pretty much feel that he is so determined to make sure he gets to the end of a stint without any dramas. He's almost being overcautious here, but at least the car isn't getting involved in any contact. It's not tumbling down the order with damage or with a problem. Yeah, and it's back up to speed again now as well, so I don't think it was a problem. I think you're right, he just wanted to bail out of that situation. As I said, he had previous with a couple of these drivers and wasn't keen to have a repeat of it. So that frees Salkeld now then. So Salkeld moves up 2 places in half a lap, essentially. He is now 9th overall, 4th in GT4, ahead of Will Moore, 5th, 6th place then for the Audi of Richard Williams, and then behind them all now is the Toyota. So they work their way up towards Pif-Paf once again. The team manager, sorry to interrupt you, the team manager of the number 15 Toyota is being told to make contact with the race director. I don't think that's to ask after health. No, OK, that will be something to do with this out-of-position start. You said he was lucky to avoid the accident at the start, and perhaps that was because he wasn't where he was supposed to be. Anyway, GT3 battle continuing, still the same order here. Stuart Proctor 3rd, Igoe 4th, Adam Ballon in 5th position, so bit stalematey this, isn't it really? Igoe rocketed up to the back of Proctor, then did nothing. Ballon rocketed onto his tail and has done nothing so far. And all the while, Andrew Howard ahead of them has just set the fastest lap. Ian Loggy back into the race. He's heading down the pit lane, and a drive-through penalty is coming for the Toyota. So John Ferguson, having tried to keep out of trouble, has got himself in a bit of trouble from his start. So it's an out-of-position start. I have to confess, on the replays, I was rather more concerned about looking at GT3 cars than the Supra, but the stewards have had a look. They feel he was out of position, and so John Ferguson cops a drive-through. But it's not the end of the world. No, exactly, because again, he should still score some points. There is Loggy being overtaken by the GT4 leader, but that's just because Ian
probably doesn't fancy going into Radion flat out in a car that's had a fairly hasty rebuild done to the rear right corner. I mean, we're not even half an hour into this race and the car is back out on circuit. That is miracle stuff for Ram Racing, and so important, as we said at the time, had to get out there, had to score some points because they're joint championship leaders.
Let's just hope he can do enough distance.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise the points won't come, but you're right, being out there is essential, plus the fact that you've paid your money. It's a great circuit, take from it what you can. So yes, the result will be disappointing, but you never know what might befall others. Now, Andrew Howard is starting to speed up. His last lap was over a second quicker than Leo Machitsky. 2:26.6 plays 2:25.2. This battle pack is for third. Stuart Proctor, Michael Igoe, Adam Ballon. So Michael's WPI Lamborghini caught by the similar car from Barwell's stable of Adam Ballon, but neither of them can catch up, or sorry, get past the McLaren. They have caught up, but again, Michael Igoe has got a bit stuck. That's allowed Adam Ballon into the mix, but the key thing here is that the gap between the McLaren and the Lamborghinis has come down.
Yes, and the frustration here for all three of these cars actually is that none of them have success penalties to serve, whereas Andrew Howard, who's now 3.2 seconds ahead of them, does. So this is working nicely into his hands. Ballon to the inside of Igoe. More of a half look than a serious attempt to go through there, though, and so they stay where they are. But yes, that gap between Howard and this trio is of significance. His pit stop will be 10 seconds longer than these three cars. He is 3.4 ahead, with still half an hour or so before he has to pit. That, I'm afraid, in the pit lane way too early is the Ginetta. Mark Sansom is in with the Assetto Motorsport car. It's not really looked that quick this weekend, in fairness, but sad to see that it's hit some unreliability as well.
Yes, that's the Assetto Motorsport car, isn't it, which did so well at Brands Hatch, for example, and it looks like a longish stop, this, doesn't it? So hopefully they can get that car through without losing too much ground relative to the class opposition. And again, it is worth being back out to try and pick up class points. There's Leo Machitsky, the race leader. Now, his last lap was a better one, and he stretched the margin a little bit, again, out over Andrew Howard in second place. So, although Andrew has done the fastest lap of the race, the lead gap has just stretched up a little bit. So Mark Lambert maybe just saying to Leo, get on that loud pedal again, just be careful, the Aston's not that far behind. And look at the gap there between the GT3 leading group and the traffic that's climbing the hill.
Yeah, absolutely. They're about to come through Radion are the GT4 leaders. Loggy, by the way, stayed out. He did that out lap and he's still going. In fact, he should be the next car that we'll see on this long shot down the Kemmel Straight. He would have stayed with it because he could just hear him rumbling through actually out of shot. This is the battle for the GT4 lead that is developing though. Ashley Marshall, not content with second place, is chasing down Will Burns ahead. The previous lap for Marshall was 6/10 quicker than him.
Yeah, so the McLaren with good aero, the BMW with lots of grunt, and so 57 Will Burns then up towards the Le Combe sequence of corners is being reeled in, isn't he, now by that McLaren. So coming into the right, left, right sequence, the gap between them at the start of the lap was 0.8 of a second. It looks even less than that now. Yeah,
absolutely. So this is by far the best we've seen from this McLaren. I'd go as far as to say it's the best we've seen from any of the GT4 McLarens this year, a car that a couple of years ago was up there as one of the cars to have in British GT4, and this year they haven't necessarily had the outright pace. Just hearing that Assetto, by the way, that Ginetta that's in the pit lane, may have had some contact earlier in the race. It wasn't at the start, but earlier in the race at some point, and that's why it is now, well, now in the garage, not even just in the pit lane. So that is going to be there for a while, isn't it?
It is, sad to say, but again, fingers crossed that if they can get it back out, then it will be able to get some class points, as long as it doesn't lose too many laps, because if you can't do 75% of the distance, then you are not classified as a finisher. Now here, Stuart Proctor is still keeping Michael Igoe at bay, with Adam Ballon right there behind him. Fair play this to Stuart Proctor for hanging onto the place, as Leo Machitsky now does the fastest lap of the race, so the lead gap goes up again. 3.3 seconds. Leo Machitsky trying to stretch that margin, and he is stretching that margin over Andrew Howard. Great noise that as the tyres rattle over the curb. Real impression of speed. Go and stand though if you can, ever with a medium bib. It is utterly terrifying. Up the hill through Radion along the Kemmel Straight. He's looking back from Stuart Proctor's McLaren. Michael Igoe is getting closer and closer and closer, but he cannot find that last nth to get past. Yeah, he was a lot quicker. Well, he was a bit quicker through Radion, but then that just seemed to peter out a bit as he went up the hill, which tells me the McLaren is working better in a straight line, but the Lamborghini is carrying more speed through the corner, and
it's an interesting dynamic there, because we do think of the Kemmel Straight and indeed the whole first sector here at Spa as being all about horsepower, but there is that not insignificant turn right in the middle of it through Eau Rouge and Raidillon, and if you've got a good chassis, you can actually overcome a bit of a horsepower deficit by just being more committed through there, as Igo was. But now he drops back again in the middle sector as the McLaren of Stuart Proctor starts to get away. Again, I know we're limited on GT3 cars at the moment, but this is a good performance for Stuart. He's running in third, yes, but he's keeping Igo and Ballon at bay, and reasonably comfortably.
Remember, I mentioned Andrew Howard's team saying that there'd been a bit of contact with the pole car being slow and all of that. Well, it's a Barwell car on pole. It was a Barwell car behind Andrew Howard. Barwell have said our data says no such thing, and race control have said no further action. So moving swiftly on, the lead gap is 3.3 seconds, and Andrew Howard is hunting down Leo Machitsky, who's doing a very good job up front. And as I say, did the fastest lap of the race last time around. This lap, in the sector, he's quicker in one, slower in the other. But in real terms, he's hanging on to that advantage. And Michael Igo is running out of ideas now as to how to get past Stuart Proctor, who is doing a very impressive job here.
Yeah, Igo again is very close going into Blanchimont, but you don't necessarily want to be that close. You can see he runs wide there, and Igo has just been warned for exceeding track limits for the second time up at Raidillon. We saw him do it actually from this very view, looking back from the rear of the Balf Motorsport McLaren. Incident involving cars 56 and 27 will be investigated after the race, as Igo now does pull alongside Proctor. Got a really good exit there from the chicane, goes to the outside line, door to door then for third place into the right-hander. Proctor hangs on, but Igo with the wide line in tries to get more speed out, and we know, David, that he's committed through this next sequence of corners.
But he's got to be careful, because if he tries and opens the door, Adam Ballon might be able to pounce. Now Adam has dropped back a couple of lengths, which might be quite savvy driving really, just waiting to see what kicks off ahead of him. Doesn't want to get embroiled in an incident. He wants that to happen and he to gain ground out of it. But again, look, the McLaren is good up the hill. Stuart Proctor stretches the margin, and there's nothing here Michael Igo can do. Michael Igo gone away, because that gap has widened between the two of them. Right now, Stuart Proctor extends the margin. This is not, seemingly, the Lamborghini's part of the circuit, certainly up against the McLaren. The McLaren is much the stronger of the two, heading along the Kemmel Straight.
Stuart Proctor did, though, take quite a shorter line over the top of the hill than he was supposed to, I noticed. He ran wide that time. Igo looks to the inside again at Bruxelles. There's no way through. So Stuart Proctor defending now a little more busily than we've seen him have to defend so far. Of course, if you can't find a way to overtake the car ahead, the alternative is you force them into a mistake, and that is what Igo's trying to do here with these little sort of looks to the inside. That flash of colour can distract the driver ahead. So far it hasn't worked, but Proctor is watching his mirrors more now, I think, than he was.
But equally, Igo's got to watch his mirrors, because Adam Ballon is almost back with him. So whereas the gap had widened out of La Source, it's come right down again now. This elasticated situation for third, fourth and fifth places, and Igo goes wide at the pit path. So a mistake comes from the red Lamborghini. Now what does that do to the remainder of his lap? Does it throw a lifeline to Adam Ballon? It does. He's gone ahead. So Michael Igo makes a little mistake, and that means now that Adam Ballon is up one spot. That's an eye drop, isn't it? Michael Igo falls from fourth to fifth, runs it out wide, coming through the Court Paul Frere, heading up towards Blanchimont now. And this is what happened, coming down towards Pif-Paf. Look, he's closing a touch to the McLaren. Maybe that slightly distorted the air of his car, but he's deep into the first part of the Pif-Paf, and Adam Ballon goes through, contact avoided. I mean, that was close, but Adam was committed.
And Igo didn't want to just let him through, did he? And he tried to sit there on the inside through the left-hander, but yeah, Ballon saw his chance. Adam, of course, spent a lot of his stint at Donington stuck behind Kelvin Fletcher in the Bentley, so he wasn't really wanting to let that opportunity go begging to actually make a place up. He didn't do a huge amount of overtaking last time. Up the inside looks Igo, but it's now the similar Lamborghini run out of the Barwell stable though. So run by different teams, these two cars, but both Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evos, and so they're both going to be very evenly matched. Now, what can Ballon do about Proctor then that Igo couldn't? Has Ballon got some new, fresh ideas that might breach the defences of the Balf car?
We're about to find out, because half a second was the gap between them when they came onto this lap, and now the run up the hill. You're looking back from Stuart Proctor's McLaren, and there the green-fronted Lamborghini of Adam Ballon. This is Michael Igo's view. Now he wants to get past Ballon as much as Ballon wants to get past Proctor. Adam Ballon, then, who we've seen as a stalwart in this championship, from his GT4 McLarens up to GT3 Lamborghinis, the former Caterham racer, with a little flash of the headlights there to try to unsettle Stuart Proctor, to try to make him just look up at the wrong moment, but it ain't working as they come now down towards Bruxelles. Stuart Proctor, say it again, has done a really good job. He's lost the best part of 9 seconds to the race leader, but he's kept the traffic behind, and that puts Lewis Proctor in a good position for the second stint.
And he's still matching, if not a tenth or so quicker than Andrew Howard, even though he's defending. So he's keeping that gap to Howard well within the 10 seconds he needs to. It's only 3.5 at the moment between Howard second and Proctor third. And as you said, less than 10 seconds off the lead. Ballon, though, was really good through Pouhon there. He's going to try and attack. Is he into pit path? Looks to the inside line. That's a tough place to pass. It doesn't work. And does that now give Michael Igoe maybe the opportunity to build some momentum against the green Lamborghini? Out of the left-hander, down into the double right then, through Campus and Corporal Frere. But Ballon couldn't get a lot closer to the McLaren, but he can't quite get up the inside of it. Then he makes a mistake. Igoe goes up the inside into Corporal Frere. Again, not a place you're going to make an overtake, and all it does is allow Stuart Proctor to sail off into the distance, so Michael Igoe doesn't get the place and just holds them both up.
So the cars now make the run up through the fast left of Blanchimont, and towards the chicane they will come, but Stuart Proctor is getting away because those two Lamborghinis, having their own little squabble, have held each other up, and that plays right into the hands of Stuart Proctor. But again, is it worth being a hero in this first stint? You want to be in the mix for your gun for hire to do the second stint of the race. You don't want to be coming in with damage because you've tried a move and it's not worked. Yes, you don't want to be stuck there losing time, but don't force the issue if it's not required.
Igoe, by the way, is now on his third warning for track limits at Raidillon, so he's getting dangerously close to penalty territory now. Gets a good run out of La Source, though. Ballon was not good off the first corner, and Igoe's going to think about sending it up the inside into Eau Rouge. This can be done, but not from this far back, surely. There is an overlap, though, and Ballon lets him go, so Igoe goes through. Sensible stuff, that, I think, from Adam. Adam had got through into that fourth place, but immediately Igoe was darting around behind him, trying to get the place back. They're holding each other up, and Ballon showing his experience there, I think.
So Michael Igoe then gets his place back. So let's see what he can do second time around against Stuart Proctor. Confidence is up now. He knows he can overtake. He knows he can take the fight. But Stuart Proctor has been a tough nut to crack so far. Plus, he's also got quite a bit of real estate to gobble up before he can get back onto terms with the McLaren. And interesting as well that having lost his place, Ballon is first of all losing time, but then way out wide coming out of Les Combes. That will not have helped. But Igoe now is certainly on his toes, isn't he? We've, of course, after all of these dramas, just to keep an eye to the clock, we're 22 minutes away from the hour mark, which means that we can start thinking in about 22 minutes' time of pit stops.
We can indeed, and as I've said, none of these three cars will be carrying success time. That is the 15 in now. This is the Toyota. So John Ferguson has had to bring the car in. They're looking at the left front. Now, we did hear, didn't we, that... no, it wasn't this car that had some contact earlier on, was it? So
this was the out of position start.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So pass. Don't know what this is. Bryn Lucas, I'm sure, will be on the case shortly, but this it doesn't look promising, does it?
Well, wheel goes back on, but is that to swing the car around and put it in the garage? There's no urgency to this, which is the disappointing thing. So what has happened this time for the perennially unlucky Toyota Supra? The GT4 battle between BMW and McLaren continues. Wheel Burns hanging on by just 7/10 of a second, just under 7/10 now, over the McLaren that runs there in second spot. But yeah, big disappointment for the Toyota team, that.
Yes, left front issues for them. Also left front issues for the Ginetta. Remember, we saw Assetto Motorsport working on that car. Front left suspension arm is being looked at / replaced, Bryn Lucas tells us. So the Ginetta in with having received, presumably, a knock on the left front corner. Right, it was the battle for the GT4 lead. Where is Adam Ballon? Adam Ballon should be in this picture somewhere and is not. There goes Stuart Proctor. There goes Michael Igoe. Where goes Adam Ballon? He didn't register a Sector 2 time, so he's somewhere in that middle sector, I think, stopped, either having gone off or pulled off, we don't know. But Adam Ballon, I'm afraid, is not circulating at the moment. We believe we've got a replay that might explain what happened to him. We just don't know where he's got to subsequently, so let's see what we can find. Adam Ballon then, so this is down into Campus, and he gets sideways, and the car snaps back the other way into the gravel, and there's a barrier not that far away there, isn't there?
There is, but I think he has got out of the gravel from what I'm understanding. So where he's gone to is the next question mark. Looks like he might be circulating again. So on our tracker map, Adam Ballon is moving, but has that cost him a lap against everybody else? Not quite. It's cost him a massive chunk of time. So Adam Ballon self-induced that, seemingly.
Yeah, and you can see the gravel pouring out of the back of the Lamborghini, but no obvious damage, so he might not have quite made the barriers. How he dug his way out of that gravel trap then is beyond me, because this car is not known for its rallycross potential, and on slick tyres and the low ride height as these GT3 cars have, not easy to dig your way out. So Ballon survives a spin just a few hundred metres away from where he had a spin 2 years ago at Blanchimont. Thankfully this one though does not end his race, and he is able to continue, as you said, importantly, still on the lead lap, just ahead of the GT4 leaders then, who we can get back to now, Will Burns and Ashley Marshall. Just a very quick point on the GT4 Toyota before this all kicks off, David. The car was pulling to the right, apparently, and Scott McKenna said that he had contact at the start, and then it just got worse, so they're investigating the reason that the car was pulling to the right.
So that car is now 2 laps down as Will Burns continues to hang on to his advantage within GT4 then, but it is a narrow gap of just over 0.4 of a second. Every time we look at this, not only does something kick off in GT3, but the gap has come down anyway between these GT4 cars. It is a snapped damper on the Toyota, which is the reason that it's in the pit lane. So a snapped damper, a legacy of the dramas at the start of the race. That's what's the word from the team, as Ashley Marshall closes right up, coming up towards Les Cons. But again, is this a mega fight for the lead, or is this a joust ready for the pit stops? It's hard to gauge, isn't it? With an hour and 18 minutes to go, I'm sure the drivers will say we're absolutely flat out and battling, but you know, this hasn't got the urgency to it that the last couple of laps would have.
Perhaps, yes. They're both silver-graded drivers, these, so they are, in theory, going to be evenly matched. Don't forget the silver-graded cars have to spend this extra 26 seconds in the pit lane compared to the Pro-Am GT4s. We only have one Pro-Am GT4 still running. That is Matt Topham, and he's not really on the pace, which makes me wonder if maybe the car did take a knock at the start after all. He's 8.4 seconds behind the next GT4 car, the 6th place car of Richard Williams. Is he within 26 seconds of the lead, though? I'm not convinced he is. I'm certainly not convinced he will be in another 18 minutes or so. So this could be the battle for the race, really, for GT4.
The minimum that you can do in GT4 before your pit stop is 58 minutes. The minimum you can do in GT3 is 62, therefore to try to stagger the amount of traffic in the pit lane. So the AMs in GT3 having to make a real big contribution here of over half the race. You can get away just a couple of minutes shy of that in GT4, but at the 58-minute mark, anticipate the pit stops to come, and everybody must be done by 70 minutes, because that's the maximum that you can drive.
Indeed. So we tend to see those Pro-Ams come in early, don't we? Certainly within GT3. As I said, though, GT4, it's all about the Silver Cup here today. Now, Ashley Marshall closes in. Is that McLaren better on the brakes than the BMW? He thinks about the inside. Very, very sideways under braking there for Will Burns. Does he get the car stopped? He does. The McLaren, though, is a bit more nimble, a bit more agile, comes off the corners well, and tries to get the run down to La Source corner, but the 57 BMW just about hangs on then. So Will Burns, twice a winner already. Ashley Marshall looking for his first win, goes to the inside, goes to the outside at La Source, and again looks for the over-under, tries to get the switchback off the turn and get the run down to the bottom of the hill, which he might just have done. They are level then as they go past the old pits, side by side towards Eau Rouge, and it's going to be the nose ahead for the McLaren, and if Will Burns is sensible, he'll bail out of this, which he does, change them for the lead in GT4, and it is Ashley Marshall at the wheel of the number 90 Balf Motorsport car that goes through, but then Burns immediately gets the run back on him heading up the Kemmel Straight.
And the grunt of the BMW will tell then, so the former Ginetta racer in the McLaren under attack from another former Ginetta racer and champion, Will Burns, on the outside line in number 57 BMW. He's not quite going to be able to make that move because he's on the longer line. You can see the way that the car has the grunt up the hill and how he got the toe as well, but that McLaren, normally with good aero, ultimately ended up helping the BMW to stay in the battle. But now through the corners of Bruxelles and down through Speaker's Corner, turn 11, is that going to be an opportunity for that McLaren to edge away? Let us see as they go down through Bruxelles. Well, for the moment, certainly Will Burns is not dropping away. He's staying right on the tail of the McLaren.
Best finish so far this year of 7th for this Balf Motorsport McLaren, and they are leading now as we tick towards half-race distance here at Spa, and I do tend to agree with you. I think through this middle sector it should be able to build a gap. having said that, he didn't look massively quicker than Burns either. It's not like he'd been harrying him for laps. The gap had been around 0.8, 1 second for a while. Maybe a mistake for Burns allowed Marshall to close in and ultimately pounce, going down into the most famous part of the circuit. And the McLaren now does try to make the move. A reminder, by the way, that Harry Hayek is still third in GT4, 9.1 seconds ahead of Chris Salkeld and 5 seconds behind this pair. So there are some decent-sized gaps, actually, throughout the GT4 field.
Yeah, indeed. So as the cars now accelerate up through the exit of the Cours Paul Frere, we're on lap 17. Leo Machitsky leads by 8 seconds from Andrew Howard. Stuart Proctor is there in third place. In fourth place, Michael Igoe. And then in fifth, number 1 Lamborghini of Adam Ballon trying to fight back. Now there is the number 4 McLaren Harry Hayek at the wheel of it, the surviving Team Rocket RJN entry. And in theory, he should be benefiting from that squabble ahead. He has been lapping a little bit faster than the 2 ahead of him. So this car should soon be coming into the fight for GT4 honours, shouldn't it?
Yes, it should. It was very wide out of Blanchimont, though. Not quite as many times it's done that, though, apparently, as the Academy Motorsport Ford Mustang, because Will Moore is on his 4th warning now for doing just that through Blanchimont, turn 19, at turn 4 as well. He's on his 3rd warning.
Turn 19 is the exit of the bus stop.
Oh, it is,
so
it is, you're right.
That last corner, you can just see in the background there, where if you carry too much speed into the chicane, you're going to run out wide, and yeah, at Blanchimont, you've got to have big whatnots to go wide lap after lap after lap. But yeah, Will Moore now about to be lapped by Andrew Howard. So with a big flash of the lights, comes through the La Source hairpin, and now the speed builds. This is on board with the Mustang. Makes a great noise, doesn't it, this car? All grunt and go. Matt Cowley to do the second stint, who'd never raced here before. There were quite a few Spa rookies this weekend. Just ride with him, listen to the noise. All up a curve, gets his foot back on the loud pedal, lets the GT3 car go. Not sure you can really ping him for track limits for that. That was just one of those things. But anyway, he survived. Look at the speed differential, though, between GT4 and GT3, because that Aston Martin is a dot in the distance, whereas here, it's almost a fiercer fight now that you've got the McLaren ahead of the BMW, and very definitely Harry Hayek is closing the gap. Yes, because I think the BMW being better in a straight line means that Marshall is having to defend a little bit more into places like Les Combes and the chicane, I would imagine. So the dynamic will change as you swap these 2 cars around. That Will Moore save was quite a good one, actually, wasn't it? I think that was the aero wash almost, as the Aston Martin swept through just as he was leading into the corner, and it coincided perfectly with Andrew Howard sliding his way through there in 2nd place overall, down to the pit path they go. They've got the leader coming up behind them. Yes, I was about to say that, because in the background, that pack of highlighter pens that masquerades as a Lamborghini is closing in fast. Will Burns up the curb, and there, look, the multicoloured leading Lamborghini has cleared Harry Hayek, so he's just going to drop back a touch on this lap, isn't he? Yes, he is. Down through the right-handers there. Let's see what the middle sector time is for Harry. Hopefully he managed to get out of the way without having to really slow down, and that is the difficulty for the GT4s. You want to try and make life easy for the GT3s, but if you're chasing down a pair of cars ahead, as Hayek is, you don't want to hit the brakes and pull way offline and get loads of dirt on your tyres, get yourself on the wrong line into the corner. You want to try and stay on the racing line if you can. Machitsky then now catches Will Burns into the chicane, goes to the inside. Leo Machitsky, we haven't seen a lot of him. He's 9 seconds up the road now from Andrew Howard. This race, certainly an improvement on Donington, isn't it? It is for some, not for others, inevitably. What goes around comes around. But Leo Machitsky, with the calming influence of Mark Lemmer from Barwell on the radio, saying, just do your laps. Whereas here, look, Michael Igoe finally is having a proper attack at Stuart Proctor. And no, he still can't do it coming off the last corner. So try as he might, Stuart Proctor has an answer to everything. Michael Igoe over the timing line. The gap between them is 0.319 of a second. Can Michael Igoe send it up the inside at La Source? Thinks better of it. Yes, but can he get the better exit? The McLaren is a bit wide, but the Lamborghini was a bit sideways, I think, and so they're pretty even coming off the turn. This gap, I noticed a lap ago, was 1.8 seconds or so Igoe's closed in rapidly there. But how much damage is there, if any, on number 18 after that knock coming through La Source? Is this an absolutely dead set, flat-out, perfect Lamborghini that can't get past a very quick McLaren, or is this a 98.5% okay Lamborghini because it's had that little whack at turn 1? We don't know.
No, well, we know other cars have pitted for repairs after apparently innocuous bits of contact at the start, so it is possible. These GT3 cars are designed to work in a certain way, and if you do start knocking the steering out of fraction, then yeah, that could definitely be affecting him. Could affect straight line speed as well, of course. The steering's out, or the camber's out, so it is a possibility. It's sadly something we won't know until Michael's out of the car within the next 10 minutes or so, but we will endeavour to get an answer for you on that. He's been driving it well, though, it must be said. It's been an attacking drive, this, from Michael, but sensible at the same time. He's not gone for any really silly manoeuvres. He's tried to show his nose a few times. That was, as you say, really the first concerted effort to get through at the chicane, and I do get the feeling that he would be prepared to stay here for the next 10 minutes if a safe opportunity to get through doesn't present itself.
Equally, the option might not be presented to do anything but stay there, because take my hat off to Stuart Proctor. He's driven an excellent stint here. He's done nothing silly. He's not cracked under pressure. He's not been dirty in his defence. He's just driven his race on his lines. He has made Michael Igoe and briefly Adam Ballon make their own arrangements, and they have not been able to find a way past. The McLaren has its strengths at certain parts, so does the Lamborghini, and Stuart is maximising those strengths where he can to stretch the advantage.
Igoe is pushing, isn't he? You can see him running wide again there out of Court Paul Frere. Now, they're going to catch the Rocket RJ and McLaren here at probably the worst point on the circuit, into the left-hander here at Blanchimont, on board with Proctor. Little bit of a lift as he goes through the apex, but not a huge amount, and he does now go up the inside. You can see Andrew Howard isn't a million miles ahead of them either. That gap was nearly 4 seconds at the start of the lap, and I would venture it's not quite that big now, as that is Igoe. Yes, I think just gone through. I thought we were on board with the McLaren for a second. That is the number 4 McLaren. It is a McLaren we're on board with, but it is the Harry Hayek GT4 car going 1 lap down.
And in the background as well, we should have had Adam Ballon, but his lap times have been coming down, but I think he's lost another chunk of time on this lap, so he's trying to bring the gap down against the 3rd and 4th cars, but he's still got a mountain to climb.
It's a big gap, though. There at Eau Rouge, he's at Pouhon, so it's over half a lap that he lost digging his way out of the beach down there at campus. Now, Proctor delayed, I think, by a GT4 car over Radeon. This is Igoe's chance now, but Proctor will always sit on the inside line, surely. Yes, he does. He goes to the inside. Igoe can't go to the outside, because I think there might be another car around here somewhere. There it was. It was the 57 BMW. Igoe looked to the inside line, and Proctor, having been delayed by the slower car, actually then, I think, was able to use it to his advantage. Use it as a bit of a pick almost to stop Igoe slinging it up the inside line.
But again, that McLaren we know is so good in a straight line. Igoe has got to do this through the corners. He's got to try to find a way through under braking or wriggling his way around the twistier bits. And here it comes to the inside line, wheel to wheel, contact just about avoided. The car didn't suffer any damage early on, according to Phil Key, but it very nearly did then. That was a really brave effort by Michael Igoe. You could see the door closing, and Stuart Proctor survives. He keeps the place thanks to the traffic. He pulls away. But that was a real heart-in-mouth moment.
And now Igoe gets delayed by Marshall, who, again, couldn't really jump out of the way there exactly. If Michael Igoe hadn't bailed out of that, I don't think either of these cars would still be in the race. And that's exactly the point you were making. You know, don't go for a silly move when we've still got over an hour to go. And Igoe, I think, might be a bit frustrated at that. He was fully up the inside. Proctor was being delayed by this car. As far as Igoe was concerned, that was his corner, but the debate will rumble on infinitely, I think, about whose corner it is, whether you're on the inside, outside, fully alongside or not. Here's the replay, though. You can see there Proctor is delayed by a sideways Marshall. Igoe's more than halfway up the inside, and Proctor just goes for the apex.
He does. He still had his nose ahead. Yes, we'll discuss that. I suspect quite a lot over the next stint, because both drivers, when they get out of the car, will have a view on it. Look, Igoe goes for the inside, turns
there was
in.
Contact.
There was a little rub, wasn't there? Yeah, and Stuart Proctor, he was ahead. Might only be by inches, but he was ahead. Anyway, they survive, and Michael Igoe is ever more committed now because his stint is running out. So what can he do before we get to the pit window? The lead gap is up to nearly 16 seconds now. Proctor is only 4 seconds back from Andrew Howard, who is not making the progress here. Ross Gunn is going to have to really be a star in his stint to bring down the gap against the very quick Dennis Lind.
Well, I mean, he's going to drop behind these two cars at the moment as well, isn't he? So he's going to come out 4th as it stands. Yeah. So he'll have to overtake these two to then go after Dennis Lind, and that ain't going to be easy. And the way that Igoe has reeled in Stuart Proctor again so quickly tells me 2 things. One, he is genuinely quicker than Stuart. lap 2, he's not particularly happy with what happened half a lap ago, and he is more determined than ever now to get this third place away. But the McLaren is just so good down the straight, the Lamborghini good on the brakes. But that's the trouble, it's so hard to overtake a car that's quicker than you down the straights because you're never close enough into the braking zones.
And by the time you can brake late enough, you've run out of real estate because you've got to turn into a corner. This could be an opportunity for Michael Igoe, and again he thinks about it, but he's not able to commit. But can he force Proctor to make a tiny error? All he needs is that door to be ajar. It doesn't have to be open, just has to sort of prise it ajar, and then he will seize the opportunity, but he can't do it this time down the Speaker's Corner. Through turn 11 they go. Stuart Proctor again, look, all he needs to do is get through that twisty section. Here, it flows, it's back onto the power all the way down the hill and around, and the gap widens.
Yeah, it certainly seems to, doesn't it? It's also harder through these high-speed corners to follow in the dirty air for Michael Igoe. There goes Andrew Howard, just saw a glimpse of him turning into Piff Paff, the McLaren and the Lamborghini behind. You do feel that if Igoe could clear Proctor, Howard would have some defending to do before the end of this stint, because the fact that these two are keeping pace with Howard, despite the battle they're having, it does sort of tell you that Andrew is struggling. They said this actually, I think at Donington, Andrew and Johnny Adam, that they both felt the car was driving brilliantly, and they'd come in at the end of the stint to say, yeah, it's absolutely perfect. And the lap time just wasn't there. And they do say, don't they, sometimes a car that's easy to drive isn't always a quick one. I don't know if that's maybe the same sort of thing here.
Well, Andrew Howard nearly 16 seconds back, but Ross Gunn will take it over. They're going to lose time, as you say, in the pits. But Leo Machitsky has just gone through to start lap number 22 and is effectively 6 minutes away now from being able to think about pit stops, because you've got to do a minimum of 62. So there is the gap coming down in GT4. Now, that BMW, partly because of the GT3 traffic, has lost masses of time in a very small number of laps. So now Harry Hyatt coming to the end of his stint. There's only really 2 minutes before the pit window opens in GT4. He is catching that BMW that looks a little bit scrappy coming into the chicane.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And coming off the chicane as well. The McLaren perhaps has looked after its tyres a bit better as well. And it is now a very familiar position here for Will Burns to be in. Looking in his mirrors, seeing a McLaren attacking, it is nice to see these GT4 McLarens running strongly here this weekend. Where can Hyatt make the move, though? Because the BMW we know is going to be good down and back up the other side of this hill.
So nose to tail, they plunge down the hill now, and the lights are flashing on Harry Hicks. McLaren trying to force an error out of the BMW, but Will Burns has come from the school of hard knocks, hasn't he? He's been racing in Ginettas, he's been racing for a season in the British Touring Car Championship, so things like that aren't going to faze him. Ashley Marshall, in the meantime, is building that lead gap within GT4, and here, the McLaren, good with aero, but the BMW with a bit more grunt maybe in a straight line, and that gap doesn't come down much, only under braking really. Yeah,
it didn't go up though either, in fairness, so I think the McLaren, maybe using the slipstream, as you said, was gaining a little bit, and the BMW is a bit offline there through Les Combes, so Hyatt will carry more speed down the hill. Is it good enough on the brakes into Purcell to have a go? No, not on this occasion. You can see the bumps there, the ripples in the tarmac as you hit the brakes into what is already a difficult downhill, slightly off camber right-hander, sideways on the exit. That BMW, I think, has chewed through its rear tyres a bit, hasn't it? It's not coming off the corners well at all.
No, it looks a lot more nervous, doesn't it now? It doesn't look as planted as it did early on in the race. We saw that at the chicane, and we've seen it again there coming out of turn 11, so down towards Pouin, and you need the car to be planted here because it's got to be a fast, committed run all the way around that left-hander. Doesn't look too bad there, in fairness, but the car behind, the McLaren, certainly looking quicker all the time now.
Yep, it is. Not going to overtake through here, though, you'd imagine, unless there's a mistake for Will Burns, who actually took a slightly defensive line there into the right-hander, unnecessarily so, I'd say. We are nearly 58 minutes into the race, by the way, so pit stop windows will be opening very shortly for the GT4 cars. That was Senna Fielding waiting to take over the GT4 Audi that Richard Williams is driving at the moment in 6th place within the class, and you can use this pit sequence, can't you, maybe to overtake a car that you can't clear on the track.
And that BMW is one because it gets an extra 20 seconds in the pits, doesn't it? So that car is going to have a slow stop. And second, third and fourth are starting to bunch up, we understand now. Andrew Howard was only 2.4 seconds ahead of Stuart Proctor last time. Michael Igoe only 1.3 seconds further back. This is the battle for second in GT4. Second in GT3 is starting to take up attention as well as these cars drop to the chicane. And again, the BMW just goes deep, almost like it's a braking issue there, that it doesn't slow down enough, scrabbles its way out of the chicane. But now, when the power kicks in, it's fine. It's a bit like an old drunk out the pub, sort of staggering around a bit. When he's in a straight line and he's focused, it goes, it's fine, it makes the right progress, but it doesn't kind of come off the corner as well as it did early on in the race.
Yeah, again, defends into La Source. This is how he lost the lead a few laps ago, but actually this time comes off the corner really well. So just as we said that car was struggling for traction, it proves us wrong. Yamachitsky, by the way, now the fuel has burnt away a bit, has just set the fastest first sector of anybody. He's already 19.3 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. He took 6/10 out of them in that first sector alone.
Possibly fuel as much as traffic, because he's had a few back markers to play with for a few laps. Now that it's a light car, as you say, the traffic is clear. In come the first of the GT4 stops then. So they're number 61 for Will Moore to give way to Matt Cowley, the very quick Northwestern ex-Formula Ford racer. Spent some time in America, didn't he, racing in Formula Ford as well. Much underrated driver, Matt Cowley. Very, very quick driver indeed. Pit stop for number 9 BMW. If you're wondering why both drivers get out and run away, where there is refuelling, the car must be empty. So you do your refuelling and then you do the rest of the pit stop. It's a two-part pit stop, if you like, in British GT regulations. Now, there is Andrew Howard being chased by Stuart Proctor. Michael Igoe's dropped off the back of the McLaren a little bit, but those three as a group, much closer than when we last saw them.
Yeah, Proctor is the quicker of the three at the moment too. He did a 26.6 on the previous lap, 8/10 quicker than Howard ahead of him, and about 4/10 faster than Igoe behind. The Mustang and the Audi then. Now the refueling is done, now you can touch the car. This is where the tyre change and driver change happens simultaneously. You just can't touch the car whilst the fuel is going in, as you said.
Harry Hayek, in the meantime, is all over the back of the number 57 Will Burns BMW. Does that have a hint of understeer, the BM at the Piff Paff? You certainly get the feeling, don't you, that that is a driver looking forward to either a new set of tyres waiting to stay in the car or at least bail, and that car will pick up on a new set of rubber. But it just does not look as easy to drive as it did when it was leading the class quite happily and was 4th overall after all the dramas at the start.
And we haven't really seen a lot of this from the Century BMWs. They've been pretty relentless in their pace throughout the entire length of a stint and a race. So maybe it's the warmer temperatures here. This track is quite taxing on the tyres because it's got lots of these long sweeping corners to negotiate. Now that is Andrew Howard in, and I was under the impression he had to wait another minute or so to pit, David.
Yeah, I think that's early, isn't it? By a minute. You've got to do a minimum of 62, and surely that's at the end of this next minute. So that, for me, is a fraction early.
And then he sort of weaved strangely as he headed Ross Gunn back out onto the second. Well, is it Ross Gunn, or has Andrew Howard gone back out again? The transponder has not yet updated to Ross Gunn's name. So was that, did he come in and they waved him away?
Possibly, yeah. Possibly.
Well, they already had this 10-second success penalty to serve, and they were already under pressure from Stuart Proctor and Michael Igoe, so that now does take them completely out of the podium places. Right, GT4 pit stops continuing. This is the leader, Ashley Marshall, in, and he will hand over that number 90 car to Jack Brown. Now, Ashley Marshall, I seem to recall being a little more competitive in his GT4 session than Jack was, so will Jack be able to retain the lead once the pit stops are done? We'll find out. Of course, they do have the advantage that the 57 car with whom they were battling earlier, and which is now battling with the number 4 car, has that 20-second success penalty. Defensive line taken by Burns into Lecom. To the outside goes the number 4 of Harry Hayek. Still cannot find a way past that big brute of a BMW, which is again on a compromised line through the right-hander, runs a bit wider over the curb. Is Hayek going to be tempted to get up the inside line here? No, still the BMW stays ahead.
So battle is on between the pair of them then as they drop down through Bruxelles, and the BMW hangs onto the place. Harry Hayek is there behind, and Andrew Howard, we understand, was called into the pits too early. So Andrew Howard, the Beechdean team, getting the numbers wrong, realising it, so he's lost that time. He's got a slowish lap now and will have to come back in, as here Michael Igoe is determined to clear Stuart Proctor before the pit stops, but they're imminent, aren't they, as they come down to the chicane there. This is the end of lap number 24. Leo Machitsky has come in, by the way, so the leader is in, and so is Proctor, and so is Igoe. So Stuart Proctor, one of the standouts for me in that first stint.
Yeah, absolutely. Didn't crack under the pressure, and it was considerable pressure for the best part of 45 minutes there, wasn't it, after the safety car came in. So down they come then. As I said, these two cars don't have success penalties. The Proctors did finish the previous race at Donington Park. They didn't make the podium places, though. Of course, Igoe never made it round turn 1. This has already been a much more successful afternoon's work. He locks up the brakes slightly. That won't matter because those tyres are getting changed, and out he gets. He looks a little bit hot and sweaty. It's been hard work out there. He was up and down like a bit of a yo-yo there, wasn't he, with his battle with Adam Ballon in particular. And he vacates the car, and they get the fuel done. And then we will see what Phil Keane can do.
What's going to be interesting as well is to see how close by the end of this the number 1 Lamborghini becomes to Andrew Howard. No, Andrew's back in, so I was just wondering whether Adam Ballon might have a chance to catch. Scott McKenna is going to have a go in the Toyota, broken damper replaced, and that is going to go back out. So at least Scott finally gets some miles under his belt, because he's been really unlucky not getting a drive this year. Dennis Lind takes over from Leo Machitsky, and that car will go back out without any extra time in the pits. And once they've cycled that one through, Barwell can then receive number 1, which of course lost time early on after its trip through the gravel after Adam lost his balance. Wasn't really worth the effort, was it?
Oh, I don't know. I enjoyed that
anyway.
one. I enjoyed that one. You're right, Ballon has continued. He didn't pit that time because this car is in the pit booth. So I did wonder whether maybe he was that far back that they could have double stacked them almost, but no, he's had to do another lap.
And there's Andrew Howard morphing into Ross Gunn now. So Ross rushes around the side of the car, and the Aston Martin factory driver will get on board. And also now you've got Phil Keane replacing Michael Igoe in number 18. So there are quite a few of the star drivers, the pro drivers, who have really got to go absolutely flat out here, but there are still some big gaps they've got to make up.
Yeah, well, Howard lost a big chunk of time, obviously, through that unscheduled pit stop, and then they have this 10-second success penalty. So they are actually the only surviving GT3 car to carry the penalty now, because Ram Racing and Team ABBA Racing's Mercedes are out. So it's the only one we have to worry about. There is the Aston Martin. Is that a bit of damage to the back? Maybe the rear bodywork a bit skewed just above the diffuser. Hard to tell from that angle, but we did hear reports, didn't we, that one of the Barwell cars, well, I guess the number 1 car, got into the back of him at the start of the race. There, though, is Dennis Lind, out on circuit now on his outlap, enjoying a very comfortable race lead. And the number 63 car then could be on course for its first victory of the season. They were on the podium in the first 2 races. They were looking like championship favourites, potentially going to Donington. There is definitely damage to the back of the Aston Martin there, the Beechstein car. That rear bodywork has been affected. And on a circuit where it is quite aero-dependent with all of these high-speed sweeping corners, damage to the rear bodywork like that, there you get a good view of it as it heads down the pit lane. That is going to potentially have an effect on lap times. It might explain why Andrew Howard dropped 20 seconds plus to Leo Machitsky in the first stint.
Which we did wonder early on, didn't we? Because it didn't take long for Leo to escape up the road after that safety car restart. So Dennis Lind will lead Lewis Proctor. Phil Keane there in number 18. The battle carries on, doesn't it, between the McLaren and the Lamborghini. So can Phil Keane do what Michael Igoe couldn't and clear that pesky McLaren?
Well, if anyone can, Phil Keane probably can. There is Ballon, by the way. This should be his in-lap to the pit lane, then, we imagine. And he will, well, it will have to be, really. He could do 1 more lap, technically. He can't do any more than 70 minutes, though, at the start of the race.
But you need your gun in as soon as you possibly can. So every lap that the slower AM is driving, it's time wasted for the pro. Sandy Mitchell will take that car over. We know that Sandy is another star, ex-single-seater racer, but the oh-so-youthful-looking Scotsman sort of belies his racing experience these days. But a Lamborghini factory driver, which is a very, very big accolade, isn't it, for him?
Harry Hayek is in. That car hadn't stopped yet. That's okay. I thought that might have been a second stop before. Of course, the GT4 cars, because the majority of them are Silver Cup, there's less of a pace difference between their 2 drivers, so they can split the race a little bit more differently. It's not like they're desperate to get the first driver out.
We shouldn't be surprised, but just to make the point, on their outlaps, Dennis Lind, Lewis Proctor, they're doing absolute bests in sectors. Now, of course, they're the star drivers, but they're fresh into the car. They've no idea what it feels like. They don't know what the track feels like, but they are so much more committed on their outlaps. It's amazing.
This is Matt Cowley, the Academy Mustang, Andrew Gordon-Colbrook, the Century BMW. Now, Darren Turner has leapfrogged these 2. Remember I said that the Silver Cup cars, the Mustang and the BMW being 2 of them, have this extra 26 seconds to spend in the pit lane. Darren Turner, though, is part of a Pro-Am outfit for Newbridge Motorsport, so they have been able to benefit. There it is, in fact, the dark blue and reddy orange Aston Martin, which is ahead of the 57 of Gus Burton as well. So they could be in 2nd or 3rd place in GT4. We'll know more once the number 4 car returns to the circuit at the end of this lap. Side by side then, Gordon Colbert to the outside, Cowley to the inside. BMW versus Mustang. There's going to be a squeeze on the apex, and Andrew Gordon Colbert goes right round the outside. That was good.
That was brave, definitely, wasn't it? So the BMW and Andrew Gordon Colbert one of the few people you can talk about in GT racing that's been a monoposto champion, the good single-seater racing club level championship. He has developed over the last couple of seasons into a really good GT4 peddler. Every time he gets behind the wheel, he looks better and he looks faster, and that was a really impressive move. And Matt Cowley is not an easy bloke to get past.
No, exactly, because he's raced in Formula Ford 1600, where you do learn to drive defensively and offensively as well, it must be said. He's trying to do some of that offensive driving now, attacking driving down into Pouhon, where Gordon Colbert makes a little mistake, runs just a fraction wide of the apex, but not enough to open the door for the Ford Mustang. And the BMW then, this number 9 car, sort of coming to the fore now after the pit stops, whereas their teammate after that 20-second success penalty have faded rather.
But they had quite a long stop anyway, didn't they? Number 9 even, so that was a lengthy stop. They had, what, 41 seconds? Yeah. So they just got on with the job, haven't they? Of doing good, solid lap times, good pit work, and assuming that the pit stop time was adhered to, we'll wait and see from the timing data whether anybody was short on the pit stops, and then that will be referred up to the stewards. Assuming all is well, which we must, then that's a good effort. 11th overall, now 10th overall.
Yes, so they head up the hill. Dennis Lind has just crossed the line to reclaim the race lead then, now that all of the pit stops have been done. I think it's still going to be around 20 seconds, the gap between Lind and Proctor, but you wouldn't bet against Lind hanging on to it. Here is Lewis Proctor, in fact, going up the inside of the Academy Mustang. That's
going to stretch the lead, though, isn't it? Yeah. Because there's traffic to clear. He's got past one, then there's another, and all this getting in the way of Phil Keane, who needs to try and find some clear real estate. They come now up over the line, so he's done it. He's got past one. He'll get past two, will he? He has to switch sides as the BMW tries to take its line for the corner, and Phil Keane goes through. Phew. Right, so what's he lost against the McLaren? Not that much. He's still only a couple of lengths back, isn't he?
I said 19 seconds between Lind and Proctor. It's 29 seconds. That is incredible. So Dennis Lind with a new fastest lap, 2:21.366. Some 3 seconds quicker than these two on the previous lap. The traffic had something to do with that. I think Dennis Lind also had something to do with that. That was a mega lap, that. And they head back up the hill once more.
Yeah, fastest lap of the race, although Ross Gunn's got ideas about that as well, as once more Phil Keane has to work his way through the traffic. But Ross Gunn is on to a lap with an absolute best and a personal best, as he's in 5th place. But what about Michael Igoe's take on that earlier stint? Michael's with Bryn Lucas.
He is indeed, and Phil Keane currently 3rd now out on track. Michael, that was quite an eventful stint for you. I know that you want to choose your words carefully, but tell us what you saw.
Yeah, we're all rolling around the last corner, up the start straight, and nobody had even gone. And next thing I just heard this noise, and it was Richard Neary coming up the middle of the pack, basically, where everyone's 2 by 2. He came right up the middle. The race hadn't even started. And then next thing I just seen him on top of the back of Ian Loggie's car. It was quite an event.
There was no damage to yours though, even out of the source too.
Yeah, no, we were okay. We did sort of got squeezed a bit on the first corner, heading down to Eau Rouge, but yeah, no, we were okay.
And then a huge fight with Stuart Proctor, couldn't quite get past him.
Yeah, no, tough fight. Quite interesting on the balance of performance of the two cars. We seemed quite quick in sector 2, but on the larger straights, we just couldn't drag with the car. So yeah, it was a good battle.
Good stuff, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, Michael Igoe, you can argue, got away very lightly with all of that drama. It doesn't look any better, however many times you see the replay, doesn't it? It's still a mighty, mighty moment that Richard Neary has. And yeah, sometimes you look at it and you think it was a really optimistic start. He timed it perfectly and the gap narrowed. And other times you look at it and you think, really, should you have gone for that in a 2-hour race? But you know, adrenaline, commitment, determination, all of those things factored in. The stewards will come up with the answer later on. Check out the British GT website for the story, because although it won't put people back in the race, at least it will be interesting to see the opinion. And of course, you've got Michael Vergers in all of this, who's the driving standards advisor, who can be asked for his opinion if it is required.
I did try and make a special effort there to look at the Toyota start. Remember, it's less relevant now because they've had their issues, but John Ferguson, I think, was ahead of Will Burns by several car lengths, actually, when the lights went down. It looked as though he'd sort of gone a lot earlier than the rest of the GT4 field. Two McLarens together here, and this is really not good news for Lewis Proctor. He gets badly delayed there by Katie Milner, and Phil Keane arrives on the scene with a huge overspeed, and that is going to be one of the easier overtakes Phil Keane has ever had to make. That was just bad timing in the traffic for Stuart Proctor, but now the McLaren, with all of that poke in a straight line, tries to use the slipstream to get back alongside, goes to the outside line, but Keane, once he takes a place, doesn't make a habit of giving it back, does he?
No. Lewis Proctor now in the McLaren, having taken over from his dad. So Lewis in, Stewart out. It was Lewis that was delayed then as the field comes out of Bruxelles. And a drive-through penalty is going the way of the Academy Motorsport Mustang for exceeding track limits once too often. So number 61, which had lost a place anyway on track, is about to be given a penalty. And with Matt Cowley having only recently got into that car, you know who has incurred the majority of those, do we not? Will Moore having done the first stint. So, drive-through penalty, track limit infringements, number 61 Mustang. Finally, Phil Keen's car, Michael Igoe started it, has cleared the McLaren now of Lewis Proctor. Can he get away? Well, even if the answer is yes, he can't make up half a minute against Dennis Lynn. So now Phil Keen can only drive his own race, flat out, see what comes of it. You never know with traffic, you never know if there might be a safety car, there might be a lifeline, but at the moment, Dennis Lind has got this in his back pocket.
Yes, he would need a safety car or a change of weather, but there is a bit of a dark cloud heading our way. I can see out of the window how much of an issue that proves to be. We shall wait and see. This isn't over yet either, because Lewis Proctor is again going to have a chance now to use the straight line speed of that McLaren to get back onto turns with Phil Keen heading up the hill towards Blanchimont and then into the chicane. He's not closing that rapidly, though it must be said. They both use copious amounts of that painted runoff area on the way into the corner. The McLaren's better off the turn as well as he closes the dive up the inside. Looks to the inside, can't get there. Of course, the other thing that could happen is exactly what just happened to Lewis. Catch traffic in the wrong place and Phil Keen might have no defence.
The McLaren's not dropping away, is it? It does show, I'm not saying this as they lap the GT4 leading McLaren or the earlier leading car. I'm not saying this as a spokesman for SRO, but it does show how the BOP works, doesn't it? Because they are so evenly matched. Flip the order around, they're so evenly matched. You know, the battle rages on. You've seen already in this race with an hour and a quarter gone where the Lamborghini is strong, where the McLaren is strong, but that Lamborghini now is ahead, and Phil Keen doing his level best to stretch that margin. You would put your money on Phil, given how good a GT racer he is, but Lewis Proctor may be less experienced, but he's doing a decent job of staying with him there as best he can.
Yeah, he absolutely is, and he's trying again to close now as they go up the Kemmel Straight towards the braking zone at Les Combes. Both braking at pretty much the same point there, I think, though. Ross Gunn, by the way, has just crossed the start-finish line. He is lapping considerably quicker than these two, as in 2 or 3 seconds on the previous lap, but he's 42 seconds behind them after that extra pit stop and then subsequent success penalty. So this is probably the battle now in GT3, barring any late dramas as we move now into the second half of the race. GT4 still being led, as you said, David, by Jack Brown now in the number 90 McLaren by 11.5 seconds over Katie Milner. Now, Katie isn't matching him, but Darren Turner, of course, who's right behind her now, less than 3 tenths between them. If he clears Milner, could he, a works Aston Martin Pro driver, catch Jack Brown over the remaining 3/4 of an hour? I wouldn't bet against it.
So one of the gaps, he's got 2 tenths of a second, then he's got to make up 11.5. It's possible. It is possible. I mean, Darren is massively experienced. He knows his way around here a lot more than Jack does. But now Lewis Proctor dropping away. He's going to end up in no man's land, isn't he? Because I don't think he's going to be caught by Ross Gunn, barring a safety car. But equally, he's not now being able to bring down that gap against Phil Keen. He is starting to fall away a little bit further now. However, just in case you were wondering about Lewis Proctor's commitment, ride with him, watch his feet. Absolutely, foot to the boards here. He comes through the sweeping left-hander coming up towards Blanchimont, but he is through on the curve on the outside line and comes down towards the chicane now then. But you can see the footwork. Now it starts to change. He goes onto the brakes, left foot braking through the paddle shift box. Bit of power just to drag it from the first part to the second of the chicane. Gentle application out of the corner. Now nail it over the line. And that left foot constantly hovering over the brake. He's not pressing it, but he's not moving it away from the pedal, so it's always there. Stands on it, down towards La Source. Eases off the brake, back onto the power, and downhill. The gap between the two of them is up to 1.3 seconds, but Lewis Proctor underlining how much effort goes in driving a race car. And there are 2 elements to this. You're either flat out or you're braking. You don't sort of think that's quick enough and lift, do you? It's either flat out or a brake. Maybe a lift there, you're allowed it going up through Radion just to avoid anything solid. But largely, look, back with his foot nailed to the floor, heading up towards Les Combes, and the gap between the two of them in this sector is down by a fraction.
Yes, it really is a work of art, isn't it, driving a racing car? It's all about weight distribution, weight and balancing the car through the corners. Darren Turner knows a thing or two about that, and he's moved into second place now in GT4, already past Katie Milner at 2.5 seconds up the road. Now, that is the car that he's chasing. Jack Brown, 10.5 seconds up the road. So even with an overtake there, Darren was a second faster, and this is where he did it. Into La Source from quite a long way back, commits to the inside, and Katie didn't really choose to fight that, did she?
No,
not on the way in anyway.
Racing room through the corner, did try and stand her ground on the outside line, hoping that the inside line for Eau Rouge would come back to her, she could keep the place, but Darren Turner's got the grunt in a straight line, so that's horsepower versus aero, and the Aston Martin goes through. Equally, Darren Turner has been around this place quite often, and Katie Milner is new to GT racing this year. She's a very quick driver, of course, but Darren Turner is one of the most experienced and accomplished drivers on this grid.
Yeah, Katie came through Ginetta Racing, didn't she, in the GT5 Challenge, where she was a podium finisher and a regular front runner. So did that for a number of years. Now she's got into this McLaren driver development program, and she hopes that will be the real boost to her GT racing career that she's looking for. So Darren Turner then, 10.5 seconds, as I said, the gap to Jack Brown. In the first sector alone, on this lap, he is half a second faster than this McLaren. He's not going to get there in the next lap or so, but give him another 15 minutes, and I think he could be right on the tail of the race-leading GT4 car for what could potentially be Newbridge Motorsport's second GT4 victory of the season. Now, that non-finish at Donington Park, coupled with the fact they didn't race at Brands Hatch, does leave Darren Turner and Matt Topham fifth in the championship on less than half the points that have been scored by Will Burns and Gus Burton, the championship leaders, but they're not looking that likely to finish on the podium here today. So a win could turn Turner and Topham's season back around.
Yeah, and bearing in mind that they were delayed at the start in that fracas, we saw the car reversing away from the melee and trying to get going again, so the safety car brought them back into the mix. Ross Gunn, by the way, has done an absolute best first sector as he tries to salvage the fastest lap of the race out of this, but the second and third place cars not lapping as quickly, but they're quite a long way up the road, so they are, so to speak, not yet in Gunn's sights, but he is doing his best to bring down that gap. So the Aston Martins, plural, GT4 and then in the background GT3 go over the line. And that is Darren Turner having rounded La Source, so his last lap was a 2:35.5, and the last lap from Jack Brown 2:37, so already the gap is 8.5 seconds. On this evidence, it's going to be absolutely a Darren Turner win because he is much quicker than the McLaren driver.
Yes, indeed, and yeah, that I think there is a sense of inevitability about it. It will be a shame for the McLaren because, as we've said a few times, Balfour Motorsport in their GT4 ranks, well, and GT3 this year, to be fair, haven't had the best of luck, and they too, in fact, they were involved in exactly the same accident that took out the Newbridge Motorsport Aston Martin at Donington 2 weeks ago. Through comes Ross Gunn. So Ross is continuing to take small amounts of time out of Keenan Proctor ahead of him, but he's still too far back without a safety car or some rain or something like that to bring him back into podium contention. On any other day, though, that mistake by the team of bringing Andrew Howard in 1 lap too early would have cost them, I don't know, 10, 15 points. Today, perhaps not. So if you're going to do it in a race where there are only 5 GT3 cars still running.
It's an odd one to do, isn't it? Because this isn't a team that's just rocked up in British GT for the first time. I know people can make mistakes, yes, of course, but it's a strange thing for a team of that level of experience to do. And it's clearly just a miscalculation on a minute, effectively. But you don't expect it to happen at that level, do you?
No, a miscalculation, misreading of it. You know, 62 minutes could look a little like 60, I suppose, if you're half concentrating, but you should be fully concentrating, I guess. Anyway, mistake was made, and they will, I'm sure, learn from that and be doubly sure to check in the future. You want to anticipate that, as you were saying, though, with that pit stop where you get your AM out and your pro in, you do try and get in at the first possible moment. So if you calculate you're coming out of the chicane or into the chicane, you know, 5 seconds before the pit window opens, you send your car in, and so you know, they are always thinking ahead of the ball, if you like, to try and get that pit stop done as quickly as possible.
Right, now there is Jack Brown, who leads in GT4. His sector times have been slower than those of Darren Turner, so the gap is coming down all the while between them as up towards the timing line they come now, and the McLaren goes by. There's the Aston in the background. Ignore the GT3 car of Ross Gunn for the moment, because that is doing its best to bring down the margin to the third place McLaren of Lewis Proctor, but he's doing comparable lap times. So now Jack Brown to Darren Turner is 6.6 seconds. It's about 2 seconds a lap this, and therefore Darren Turner easily has enough time on his side in order to take the win.
It looks that way, doesn't it? He makes his way past the old pits, then we'll ride on board again. Let's listen to whether there's much of a lift. There will be a bit of one, I'd imagine, through the right-hander.
A lot of curb.
A lot of curb, yes, but then really, the more curb you take through the left, the better your line is then through the right, up through Radion, and that's what they do. There is your GT4 leader then. The gap is now, what, half the length of the Kevil Straight between these two. Through goes first place, up towards us comes second place, and there is third place, Katie Milner. Now, she is 3.5 seconds ahead of Gus Burton, who is 3.5 ahead of Andrew Gordon-Colbrooks. These Century Motorsport BMWs bouncing back from their success penalties. Don't count them out of this yet either. They might not be able to catch Turner, but certainly Milner, maybe Brown, could be within reach.
Certainly Katie Milner, because she is the slowest of the 5 in the leading Gaglin GT4, so the lap times are not that sparkling at the moment, as out of sequence in has come the Ian Loggy, now Jelmer Berman car. Now, that's an interesting one, that he has done such a long stint, because although they lost time in the pits, he was in that car from the start of the race. So even though the car was stationary, I would say he's exceeded his drive time, because he was put in at the start, although the car has been in the pits. Whether this has the same regulation as World Challenge Europe of the stint being started when you cross the pit out, stewards can discuss, but there you have the car in the pits anyway, and finally Jelmer Berman gets a go to drive pink Mercedes. Now, this is the Igo Keen Lamborghini, and the rear view mirror, for what use it has, is hanging off now, and it's all wobbly. There it is, it flicks round. It's not the mirror, it's the screen, really. So what's going on behind Phil Keane is all a bit of a mystery for some of the lap, because that screen is going to rotate, but he doesn't want to come into the pits and have it sorted, because that's a big loss of time. So in a sense, he just needs to make sure he's ahead of that McLaren, so that he doesn't have to worry about what's going on behind, and short of that thing falling off and hitting him, there's no then concern.
We did have a car, a GT4 car, I think the Toyota at Brands Hatch had a similar issue, didn't they, as well? So, and also, to clear something up for those of you who are watching our Donington race 2 weeks ago, Johnny Adam was fiddling around with something in the car, which later turned out to be adjusting mirrors that were loose on the outside of the car, the actual wing mirrors that the glass was shifting around when he went through the corners. So every time he went down a straight, had to sit there and adjust it. I noticed as well that Phil Keane car is missing one of its little winglets on the right front corner, so there was a little bit of artificial damage, if you like, to the front of the car.
And also Andrew Howard and Ross Gunn's car is under investigation for a pit lane infringement. Now, whether that was the first time it popped in or the second for the proper pit stop, we'll wait and see. But certainly number 7, which is already struggling to make up lost time, is being looked at for a possible infringement in the pit lane.
Yes, as long as they didn't touch the car during the first visit to the pit lane, they should be okay. You are allowed into the pit lane, I guess, as long as you don't make that your mandatory pit stop. Right, Katie Milner about to feel some pressure here, I think, from Gus Burton then. Gus Burton, the championship leader in GT4, remember, this gap was, what, 3.5 seconds a lap ago. It's 1.5 now, so he's 2 seconds a lap faster than Katie, who hops over the curb through Les Combes and turns into the final right-hand element of that. They've got Sandy Mitchell behind, who once again is playing catch-up. He's had to do this a few times, hasn't he, after Ballon was tipped into a spin at Brands Hatch in the first stint, bounced back from a success penalty last time at Donington, and wasn't really able to make a huge amount of progress through his stint. And again here, after Ballon's span, Mitchell is left with the thankless task of bringing the car home in a fairly lonely 5th position. He goes up the inside of Gus Burton. He'll get stuck a little behind Katie Milner. Through Pouon, tries to get up the inside through the second part. Katie does not let him do that and chops the nose off the Lamborghini. I guess her speed through the corner was a bit more important than Sandy Mitchell. Sandy's not really battling anyone. Katie Milner very much is, as she tries to hang on to this 3rd place.
Andrew Gordon-Colbrooks BMW, the sister car to the one at the back of this gaggle, has got to drive through now for track limit abuse. So there are more opportunities in the longer race to top them all up, aren't there? And you kind of reap what you sow. So another one now for track limit out of GT4 as well. Interesting, that onboard that we had from Darren Turner, just showing how relatively slower a GT4 car was at Raidillon compared to a GT3 car, but it's still a very, very fast car, the GT4 Aston. Now here, number 4, Katie Milner, under attack from Gus Burton, so this is for third in GT4, it's about to change.
Yes, potentially into the very next corner, because out of Blanchimont goes the BMW. Actually ran a bit wider, though, than Katie, who might choose to defend the inside. She doesn't, because she felt that the BMW was a car length or so too far back, which it was. Tighter line, though, taken by Gus Burton. Tries to convert that now into a quicker line off the chicane. Milner this time is the one that runs a little wide, and the 57 car, which is about to lose its teammate car from behind. In fact, I think the number 9 car has already dived for the pit lane. Yes, it has. Andrew Gordon-Colebrook in to serve that drive-through penalty. Milner defends into La Source. The BMW tries to get the exit speed, but still can't quite get there. There is the Andrew Gordon-Colebrook car in. Shame that, because Andrew, particularly in the first part of his stint, was really impressive and looked as though he might be able to contend for a podium before the end. But with now just over half an hour to go, this becomes the key battle then, really, the one for third in class.
And there, the BMW on its toes coming out of Raidillon. So along the Kemmel Straight, this is where the horsepower of the BMW takes on the aero of the McLaren. They're absolutely side by side. The BMW towering over the McLaren as they head up towards Les Combes, with Gus Burton almost looking down on the McLaren. He's on the outside line and he can't make the move. So good effort this by Katie Milner to defend and keep the place going through Les Combes now. Also the team manager of the Beach Dean Aston Martin being told to get in touch with the race director, so that story is continuing to bubble away in the background.
Yeah, and of course a penalty for number 7 could benefit Sandy Mitchell, so he does have a reason to keep on it here, does Sandy. His lap times aren't great, it must be said. He's the slowest of the GT3 cars still circulating, partly because he's no real inspiration to go any quicker, has he, with no one around him that he's racing for position with. But he might have someone to play with if Ross Gunn is handed a penalty. Down through Pouhon goes Katie Milner, who, of course, a lap or so ago did rather get in the way, didn't he, of Sandy Mitchell through Pouhon. So that may well explain some of the loss of time. Oh, Burton again looking in some odd places, but he does have his nose up the inside now through Piff Paff. The next corner's a left-hander, though. Can he go around the outside? Looks like he can. He's going to have the inside line for Campus, and look who's catching them. Dennis Lynn. The last thing he wants to see now, with a 43.5-second lead, is side-by-side GT4 cars, but through goes the BMW then. Third place in class now for Gus Burton.
And Dennis Lynn can, at least with that amount of margin, be a bit more patient, and there the road opens up for him. And of course, in a much quicker GT3 car, he can easily fly by. So Dennis Lynn clears the traffic, goes through, and now puts the move on the inside of Gus Burton, who doesn't give him very much room, it seemed, on the way into the corner. That was very close to the edge on the inside line for the Lind Lamborghini. Dennis got away with that, but it did look as though all of a sudden that gap was shrinking on him. Got away with it, and he's cleared the traffic. Phew, sigh of relief all round, but Dennis Lynn then being uncompromising. He has the fastest lap of the race to his name, and we have an 8-second stop-go penalty being issued for the number 7 Aston Martin. It was briefly on the timing screen and has now gone off the timing screen, but it's back on. It was for speeding in the pit lane. An 8-second stop-go penalty for the number 7 Aston Martin for speeding in the pit lane. Whether it was on the way in or the way out doesn't really matter. The penalty is the penalty. When it's not your day, it's not your day. And so I'm afraid to say, after Andrew Howard's team brought the car in early, you can understand frustration on both parts of the drivers, and an 8-second stop-go for speeding is the result.
I'd be intrigued to know which pit visit it was that the speeding took place on, whether it was Andrew Howard in frustration at being waved back out of the pit lane, who was a bit too heavy on the right foot, or whether it was Ross Gunn keen to use every second of his time in the car to regain some time. We'll see if we can find that out. Right there, battle for the lead in GT4 is imminent, I think, here. Darren Turner is 2.4 seconds behind Jack Brown. On the previous lap was only 1 second faster than the McLaren, but it matters little. He's got 27.5 minutes and change left to try and get past the McLaren ahead. He's catching quickly, but catching is, after all, one thing. Getting past is going to be a little trickier, and you can be sure that Jack Brown, chasing down his and Ashley Marshall's first ever win in the championship, is not going to go down without a fight, and Darren will have to have that in the back of his mind.
But he's got the time in which he can sit there, he can assess where the McLaren is strong and where it's weak, and just plan the move, can't he? So he comes now down towards Campus once more. The GT4 cars here are on lap number 33. And Darren Turner has done, as you would expect, a great job of chipping away, bringing down the gap, lap after lap. And you've got to feel a bit for Jack Brown, haven't you? Because he's about to be monstered by a very, very accomplished driver. Right, back into the pit lane is the Toyota. So number 15, Scott McKenna bringing it in. And are they going to give John Ferguson a bit more drive time now, just to really maximise their time at Spa? And also it's useful data, of course, to keep running the car, just to know what it's like around here for the future. So the gap between the GT4 leaders, Andy, is virtually nothing now. Darren Turner has almost got to the back of the McLaren.
Yeah, 2.4 seconds was the gap. It's probably closer to 1.4 now as they come through to start their 34th lap of the race. The leaders are on lap 36 there, you can see just behind. In fact, 37 now for Dennis Lind, because he is going to catch these two cars within the next couple of corners. What sort of bearing that has on their battle, we'll wait to see. Ross Gunn, by the way, has been in to serve that speeding penalty now, so he returns to the circuit, and I wonder how far ahead of Sandy Mitchell he is. The gap will have come down, of course, quite considerably, because he's been up and down the pit lane, so we'll try and get confirmation of that at the end of this lap.
Blue flags busily waved to the traffic, and now Darren Turner is about to think about where to make the move, isn't he? First of all, he's got to let Dennis Lind go by, and if the GT4 Jack Brown McLaren is delayed slightly by having to dodge out of the way of the quicker car, that will bring Darren Turner yet closer to him. But he's game on between those two. It is when, not if, Darren Turner gets by, isn't it now?
Yes, and we can afford to be patient, as you said, and I don't think he's going to go for the move straight away. This is the first time he's been close enough to have a go, but Brussells, he decides, is not the point to do it. How much of a defence will, or indeed can, Jack Brown put up here against a factory Aston Martin driver who goes up the inside line into Speaker's corner and just bailed out of it? But Darren, in fairness, isn't showing a huge amount of patience here. He wants to get through straight away, but Jack Brown is doing exactly what I thought he'd do. He's defending, he's trying to keep Turner at bay. They are 20 seconds at least ahead of Gus Burton, so Turner, again, doesn't have to worry about being delayed to the point that they catch him. And they've also got the Helmer Berman Mercedes now to try and allow through. Neither of them do so going into pit path. Turner is looking at every single corner here, isn't he?
He's a pro driver. He knows exactly how to race in traffic. He knows exactly how to deal with quicker cars around you. Bearing in mind, you know, here he is in GT4 with a GT3 car around him. It's a bit like being in his old GT days with LMP spec cars around him. He knows exactly how to behave with quicker cars, how to get out of the way without losing time. So Darren Turner doing exactly what we'd anticipate and staying with the McLaren. At the start of the lap, the gap was 11 tenths of a second. It's down to what, about 3 tenths, 4 tenths max now as they come through Blanchimont. It could even be that down to the chicane on this lap, Darren Turner is able to make a move. And you've got to feel a bit for Jack Brown. The pressure is starting to come, isn't it? Every time he's able to look at what's going on behind him, not only is there a car very close behind, it is driven by one of the best credentialed drivers on the grid.
Yes, who, to my amazement, had never won a British GT race until Silverstone a month ago, but he's got one now, Darren. Really nice guy, Darren Turner, as well. Really good to chat to him in the paddock on a couple of occasions, and he's loving his British GT racing now that he's getting to get back behind the wheel again here this weekend at Spa. So, still hasn't made the move then. He's been here now for a lap or so behind Jack Brown, having sort of tested the waters almost and realised that Jack is going to try and defend this position. He maybe has to sit back and reassess the situation. He's got 23 minutes though still to do this, and we know he's quicker, so Darren drops back, cools everything down, builds a bit of momentum up again. He's in the slipstream up the Kemmel Straight, and Lecombe is probably the best place to try and do this. Jack Brown knows it though, goes to the inside, and once we get halfway up the hill, the McLaren actually starts to get away. There is the advantage from that slippery shape in a straight line.
So the gap is down again under braking. More track limit warnings are coming now. One for Sandy Mitchell, one for Ross Gunn as they press on and use all of the real estate. Darren Turner using all of the real estate as well. Sandy Mitchell is almost up on the tail of Ross Gunn now, so there's going to be a change imminent for fourth. There's a change imminent for the GT4 lead then as Darren Turner tries to force the issue at Bruxelles, but he can't do it there. Downhill they will plunge now. He wants the inside line coming out of Speaker's corner, line it up for Pouin, so the move starts now. Is he going to be able to dive up the inside? No, Jack Brown defends the inside line. but Darren Turner is brave enough to have a go on the outside. Is this going to work? This is really, really, really brave stuff. It's the longer line, it's the slower line, it's the braver line, and then it'll become the inside line for the Piff Paff, and Darren Turner stands his ground right the way around the outside of the McLaren. He's going to get the job done under braking for Piff Paff. Fantastic. That is how you take a place. Brilliant stuff.
And full credit to Jack Brown as well. He didn't even consider squeezing Darren over the curb on the extra pit. He realised that he'd lost the position, he'd lost the fight, there was no need to force the issue. Now we can switch to this then. This is 4th place. So I asked the question a lap or so ago, how much time would Ross Gunn lose to Sandy Mitchell? Well, all of it is the answer, because Sandy is right on his tail now, and Ross Gunn, who's frustrated after the speeding penalty and the extra visit to the pit lane, and he's being warned about track limits, Sandy Mitchell needs to use all of that now to his advantage to try and find way past the Aston.
You asked another question as well. Which visit was the speeding offence committed first?
There we go. On the way out, by any chance?
You might think that. I couldn't possibly comment. And so Ross Gunn now has to make this as wide an Aston Martin as possible, just as Senan Fielding has to make his Audi as wide as possible to fend off Andrew Gordon-Colebrook, both of them stepping out over the curb. Considering the entry has been a small one and we lost cars in numbers on the first lap, there's always been something to talk about in this. It's been a really lively race, all things considered, hasn't it?
Yeah, same was true of Donington 2 weeks ago as well. We lost a lot of GT4 cars that time, but GT3 was still entertaining. Kind of the other way round here. The BMW then, remember, which came in to serve that stop-go penalty earlier on, is probably a bit better than the Audi in a straight line. So this is Gordon Colebrook's chance, to challenge Senan Fielding for the place then into the chicane. Fielding will hover over that inside line into the braking zone. To the outside goes the BMW. It's done this before, remember. Good on the brakes, but Senan Fielding gets his elbows out there, made it clear to Gordon Colebrook that he wasn't going to just let him sweep round the outside there, and manages to keep the place. They've got Matt Cowley not a million miles behind them. There you can see him in the background. That gap was 7 seconds. It's now going to be significantly less than that, 4 seconds, as once more Audi versus BMW. We're not that far from the German border here. This is a very German flavour to this battle, as still the Audi hangs on. But Matt Cowley on that previous lap was nearly 4 seconds quicker than these two. So a three-way fight in the offing here, I think.
It's all building up nicely, isn't it, then, with what have we got? Just under 20 minutes to go out of 2 hours of racing. It's good to see the variety as well in GT4, because every battle we look at has got different cars in it. And it does illustrate why GT4 is so popular and so successful, as the cars now then make the run towards Les Cons once more. The Mustang in the background trying to fight back after the drive-through for Matt Cowley. So that car also in the mix. And Andrew Gordon-Colebrook round the outside, runs out of road because he braked too late. And AGC now has to slalom his way through the chicane to stop people shortcutting Les Cons and then try to rejoin, and he does so just ahead of the Mustang.
That caught our camera operator a bit out there as it appeared from the right of shot, just in front of the Ford Mustang then. And so Matt Cowley, frustratedly, can't make the move stick yet. And actually, the fact that Gordon Colebrook's dropped back from Senan Fielding means that their battle is put on ice a bit, and it was their battle that was allowing Cowley to catch so quickly. Right, back to Gunn and Mitchell then. Sandy Mitchell in the wheel tracks of the Aston Martin as it makes its way up the hill. So remember, the number 7 car is a joint championship leading car. The car with which it's sharing the championship lead has had strife. That was the number 6 car. So actually, their nearest rivals that are still running healthily in the race are the number 1 team from Barwell Motorsport. There are some 15 points between these two cars, but this could be the two cars that are top 2 in the championship at the end of the race.
Yeah, it's been quite an important race for the championship situation, hasn't it? With, of course, Johnny Adam not able to score by not being here. Now Andrew Howard's car that came here as the joint championship leading car in danger of losing yet another spot. So we're not done yet. The stories are still rumbling on. I tell you, the stewards are busy. It's constant updates and requests for further evidence from them about what's been going on in the race thus far. And Sandy Mitchell, who is then having taken over this car from Adam Ballon, right on the back of Ross Gunn. Ross finding his way back into GT racing in the British Championship, but he and Andrew have shared many a car together. Of course, it was for Beechdean that Ross Gunn won the GT4 title with Jamie Chadwick a few seasons back. And for the moment, he's fending off Sandy Mitchell, who is there, but not quite close enough to strike yet.
No, but again, Sandy's a pretty patient driver, and Ross is very aware of the fact that this is not a regular gig for him. He's standing in for Johnny Adams, so he won't want to do anything silly.
Looks really relaxed in the car, doesn't he, actually, compared to some that we've seen. Maybe it's just the way that he's sat, but he looks relatively relaxed doing all of this.
Yes, which I'm fairly sure he's not, but yeah, has that sort of appearance of him, doesn't he? He shouldn't be relaxed, really, because Sandy Mitchell is asking all the right questions of him now. I know I wouldn't be that relaxed if I was sat in the cockpit of the Beechdene AMR Aston Martin Vantage. Across the line again towards the hairpin at La Source. And where is that Lamborghini stronger than the Aston Martin? Well, under braking, you would imagine, through maybe some of those tighter corners up at Lake Calm or through the chicane. A good run through Radion would help him. The gap then a car length or so as they drop down through the dip. Is the Aston Martin going to be better, though, through the high-speed corners? Look maybe a little quicker out over the top of the hill. And so Mitchell now has to try and use the slipstream to close back in again.
And this is Ross Gunn, hard at work then. All the attention is behind him. Sandy Mitchell then closing in this fight for 4th and 5th places. And Ross Gunn with the mission being to give as good a result as he can to Andrew Howard for Andrew's championship hopes. Don't be a hero, just bank points. Help your bill payer, your AM driver, get the result required. Keep Andrew Howard in the hunt in the championship. But equally, don't give away places. So he needs to defend from Sandy Mitchell, as there, Dennis Lind, who is almost a lap up, seemingly, comes towards Les Comps. So he makes the run now into the right, left, right sequence. And as he does so, sprints off down towards Bruxelles. Dennis Lind has yet to have a British GT Championship win. Liam Machitsky has had 4 outrights, further 4 class wins. But for Dennis Lind, this could be his day in British GT. He was confident pre-race. And he's going to be like a number of the teams and drivers here in a week's time, or less than a week's time, because he's in the Total Energies 24 Hours of Spa, but in something different. He's in a WRT Audi, and it's a very good combination of drivers that he's got. So Dennis Lind could be on a roll here, and comes out of Pouhon, makes the run now up towards the Piff-Paff, and utterly dominant. I know that circumstances at the start shaped the way that the race has panned out, but Liam Machitsky did a great job in stint 1, and there he is, calmly watching what Dennis is up to.
He'll be pretty happy to hear, therefore, that if we threw the checkered flag now, which we're not, there's another 15 minutes left of the race, but if we did, the points would put this car 1.5 points up in the championship on everyone else. This would be the championship leading car. So we've had this almost every race this year, haven't we? Someone that was quite a long way down in the points wins the race, and suddenly they're right back in it as others hit some trouble. So 37.5 points for a race win at the moment in 4th position. Johnny Adam, well, not Johnny Adam, but Andrew Howard would score 18 points, and that would put him 1.5 points behind this one. So for Barwell Motorsport, at a circuit at which they've not always enjoyed the greatest of success, this has been a good day for the 63 cars, but a very good day. They're on course to win by nearly a minute, and with it take the provisional championship lead.
And there, Ross Gunn is still hanging on to 4th place. Sandy Mitchell charging along behind, but what he's got to try and do, and it won't be easy, is to force a mistake out of the Aston Martin, as Andrew Gordon-Colebrook is having another go at Senan Fielding. This time he's got the corner right, but this time he's got the Mustang right up there behind him. So Matt Cowley now tries to wriggle past the M4. The R8 ahead hangs on to position. Senan Fielding doing a good job here of keeping what is 10th place overall, but there are just fractions of a second between the 3 of them here.
Yes, so the BMW of Andrew Gordon-Colebrook has reeled the Audi back in again and brought with it Matt Cowley. So this is that 3-way fight that we were kind of hoping for. They're some 19.6 seconds behind Katie Milner, by the way, so I think she's safe in 3rd place now in GT4. And there are no other GT4 cars on the same lap as these 3 behind them. So the fight then for 4th place in the GT4 category. Audi, BMW, Ford Mustang, and the Audi, I don't think is the quickest of these 3, but it is a pretty wide Audi at the moment. Senan Fielding, a good little racer as well. Not just quick, but he knows where to position the car. And now that he's got the Mustang on the back of this queue, he can use that to his benefit. Look, back up Andrew Gordon-Colebrook into Matt Cowley, and Cowley tries the outside line. And guess what? All of this is about to be encountered by the Ross Gunn Sandy Mitchell battle. The 5 cars together, this will make a brilliant sight as they head up towards Blanchimont.
But it's not the sight Ross Gunn wanted. Matt Cowley jumps out of the way. Ross Gunn goes by. Sandy Mitchell is closer than ever now, hoping to take advantage of the traffic. So Ross Gunn is the pioneer. He bulldozes his way through. Sandy Mitchell goes with him. Easy peasy. They've cleared the traffic within a couple of corners. And now up towards Blanchimont. There, actually, the Aston stretches its advantage once again, but Sandy Mitchell had got right under the rear wing in the traffic. Sandy running out of time here, 12.5 minutes to go. Matt Cowley running out of time, as there, Gordon Colebrook has another go at the Audi, and he still can't find a way by.
And every time he goes offline, he exposes himself, doesn't he, to Matt Cowley, who gets a good exit there from the chicane. He pulls alongside the BMW. Now, which of these two cars is best in a straight line? I think the BMW still came off the corner fractionally better on that wider line, so it manages to just ease back in front of the Academy car. That had that issue in morning warm-up earlier on, had an incident last time out, remember, with the John Ferguson Toyota. And so far, it looks as though they're going to log a finish, but this battle is far from over. 12 minutes left in the race then. They flash through Eau Rouge.
The number 6 Ian Loggy Mercedes being warned about track limits, as this is Matt Cowley fighting the Mustang over the brow. And then keep on climbing. So Ross Gunn keeping Sandy Mitchell at bay for 4th place. Dennis Lind has just started. Lap number 43, absolutely miles clear.
To the outside again goes Gordon Colebrook. He's tried this a few times now, and it's not yet worked. He gets back in line, though, just before Cowley can go up the inside, and that was an optimistic look at the inside, I think, into the last part of Les Combes. That move often ends in contact. We've seen it happen before, and Cowley decided better of it there. But fascinating watching the gaps between the cars ebb and flow, isn't it, as Gordon Colebrook winds up for another go against Fielding. He goes for it, it doesn't work, he drops back into the clutches of Cowley. The dynamics of this three-way fight are fascinating, and all three cars making their lap time in slightly different ways, which just adds to the very exciting nature of this fight for 4th position.
Yeah, the BMW, much more competitive proposition over the last few years, was very strong in the GT Asia series that SRO ran pre-pandemic as well, but it's good to have them in this championship, and Century running them very effectively. The Audi R8 you always think of as a GT3 car, although we've never seen that many in British GT. It's good to have the GT4 version on track. In the background there, you've got Matt Cowley trying to force a mistake, and he has done so out of Andrew Gordon Colebrook, who missed his braking point fractionally there for Campus. Matt Cowley tried to get up the inside, couldn't quite do that, but suddenly the whole dynamic of this has changed. The Audi is gone, and now AGC is very much elbows out, having to defend that place.
Yep, Cowley gets in that slipstream then, headlights ablaze for all three of these cars as they head towards Francorchamps. They head towards the final 10 minutes of the 4th round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship, but that BMW is just so good up the hill. Look, he's closer now to Fielding than Cowley is to him, which was not the case at the bottom of the hill, so it really is the definition of a grunt and go GT4 car. Fielding outbreaks himself this time into the chicane. Cowley doesn't know where to go. He's watching the BMW. He's trying to take advantage of it. The race leader, Dennis Lind, is about to lap them as well, somewhere around La Source, and he is going to be a little bit nervous now, because even at this late stage, even with a 50-odd second lead, Dennis Lind could still come unstuck in traffic that is side by side again. Gordon Colebrook tries to go right round the outside of the hairpin. That doesn't work, and Fielding somehow is keeping them all at bay.
So downhill they plunge there, and through goes the Lamborghini. So the traffic now starting to be a factor. Dennis Lind working his way through the GT4 battle pack. Up the hill they go. Dennis Lind's been caught by the Mustang there because he had to temper his pace because there's nowhere to go. GT4 cars either side, they're having their own battle. The Lamborghini is absolutely stuck. Dennis Lind trying to sort of shovel the Audi along, saying, come on, get out of the way. But they are so busy battling. Now, he has got time in hand. He doesn't have to force the issue. And in fact, look, the Mustang unlaps itself there. Back through goes Matt Cowley. So Dennis Lind has a grandstand view of 3 wide out of Les Combes. Round the outside goes the BMW, round the outside goes the Mustang. The Audi on the inside line is going to lose out here. Lind still needs to get past them. He's sat there, stuck. He's got past one. He's on the outside line to get past the Mustang, and he's done it. But Andrew Gordon Colebrook has finally got into the lead of the GT4 battle, and Dennis Lind now commits to the inside line. Dennis's take on this, when you get to talk to him about it, will be well worth listening, I should think, because that was very heart in mouth as he had to somehow wriggle his way through the traffic, all of whom were absolutely going for it.
That all happened because Gordon Colebrook actually cleared Senan Fielding going into Eau Rouge. He was ahead of him at the bottom of the hill, but then he was slow through Radion, and so Fielding came back at him, and they went side by side. As you said, the road was blocked then for Lind, so but the move was made quite a long way, a lot earlier in the lap, and then Fielding did his very, very best to get the place back. That was brilliant racing, though. At no point there was there any contact. That was brilliant, clean, wheel-to-wheel GT4 racing. And Dennis Lynn there, as you say, really enjoying the fact he was nearly a minute up the road. He didn't have to force the issue himself.
Darren Turner is being studied intently for track limits. The number that car has clocked up seems to be on the increase. Now, Darren is saying to the team, I'm not running wide at a given corner that's being looked at, but there are reports that the number of offences is totting up. So there might be a sting in the GT4 tail yet to come.
5.7 seconds ahead of Jack Brown, not enough therefore to survive a penalty if one were to come. But we're late in the race as well, so there is always the option, isn't there, to add time on at the end of the race if they can't give him a pit lane penalty beforehand.
I said Ian Loggy was in the car for too long. Well, the stewards agree,
yes.
So they're going to have a word with the team at the end of the race. So no surprise, perhaps, that in a straight line the fastest cars are the Aston and the McLaren, both of which have proved pesky for Lamborghinis to overtake. 162.8 miles an hour on the climb up the hill towards Les Combes. Ross Gunn still doing a great job of keeping Sandy Mitchell behind him. The next quickest cars, of course, Lamborghinis, and then the Aston Martin of Andrew Howard from earlier on. The fifth fastest car on that section of the circuit.
So that does sort of back up what we've seen. As you say, the cars that have been the trickiest to overtake tend to be the ones with the strongest engines. The Aston Martin has always enjoyed a strong power plant, and Ross Gunn enjoying that now as he succeeds for the time being on holding on to this fourth place. So into Piff Paff they go. The number 7 car then. Fourth place for Ross Gunn. Sandy Mitchell fifth. If Mitchell clears Gunn, by the way, and takes fourth place away, that will move him ahead of Berman and Loggy. As things stand, the number 1 car would be tied with Berman and Loggy in the championship for what would be third place.
Darren Turner, drive-through penalty for track limits. So the GT4 leader gets a drive-through. Told you there might be a sting in the tail. Here it comes. So Darren Turner, despite his protestations, is being done. And so it is a drive-through penalty for the GT4 leader for track limits. Now, he's 5.7 seconds ahead. Line to line is 27.8 seconds in the pits.
Which means he could lose second place as well to Gus Burton, because Gus is about 24 seconds behind Darren Turner. So they'll still be on the podium. If he does it now, though, he might just have time to fight back, but he didn't. He's gone round for another lap.
Exactly right. And so the story ain't over yet in GT4. It's not over in GT3, is it, for fourth place? Ross Gunn versus Sandy Mitchell as they come into La Source once again. Back onto the power. So frustrating this for Sandy. He just can't find a way past that Aston Martin, and Ross Gunn is doing everything that's required. Play to the strengths of that car and its horsepower, isn't it? Where, just like the McLaren that we saw the Lamborghini struggle to clear earlier on, it is so good on this section with all of that grunt, getting through the traffic again now.
And that Aston Martin was the bane of Sandy Mitchell's life at Donington as well, because he, as I say, overcame that success penalty they were serving, caught the battle between Johnny Adam and Marcus Clutton, as it was for Enduro Motorsport. They're not here this weekend, unfortunately, and then couldn't get past either of them then, because, again, the Aston Martin and the McLaren were quicker in a straight line. So different scenery here at Spa, but very much the same story for Sandy Mitchell, and they need to try and make sure that they're not coming from behind in that second stint in future races, if possible. Right, back to GT4. Matt Cowley then on the tail of Andrew Gordon-Colebrook, and that is Katie Milner off at the chicane then, and getting out of the car at the chicane. Now that is going to be a non-finish, and if that car's not in a dangerous position, I don't know what is. It's too late for a safety car, surely. 4 minutes to go. So it is all kicking off now in GT4. Remember, she was running in, fourth place, wasn't she? Ahead of Andrew Gordon-Colebrook and Matt Cowley. So these two both inherit a place, and Katie Milner, unfortunately, that bad luck this weekend for Team Rocket RJN continues.
It does indeed, and as you suggest, what can they do about that car with so little time left? By the time you've scrambled them, I mean, it doesn't take long to get it out of the way. Maybe a full course yellow could cover that and just push it quickly out of harm's way, unless the car can fire up again. Anyway, on track, it doesn't really matter for the race lead. Dennis Lynn nearly 50 seconds ahead up front. The real question mark is over Darren Turner and his drive-through, isn't it? And where that's going to drop him to, but third in class potentially as Ross Gunn booms past in the Aston Martin. So Gunn is currently fourth, Mitchell is fifth. Darren Turner has a lift, then gets back on the power through Blanchimont, and then down towards the chicane. We've got 3 minutes change on the clock. The race leader is about to come through the end of the second sector then, so coming into the approach to Blanchimont now.
Turner's still not pitting.
No, I think they're trying to argue the case, aren't they? Or maybe, but stay out and argue about it at the end.
Only tends to end one way, though, doesn't it? And you can then end up with a bigger penalty for not serving the initial penalty. There goes the 90 then. So that is Jack Brown, 9.1 seconds behind now. 2.5 minutes to go. No sign of a safety car, which is good news for Turner. The last thing he wanted was a safety car before he came in to serve the penalty. That could cost him even more time. But he's going to have to pit shortly. There are only 2 more laps left in the race.
Yeah, I'm trying to peer into the distance to see whether the Katie Milner car has got going again or it's been pushed out of the way, but there's still a yellow light down there. So the car, I think, is still stranded. But yes, the race continues. Drivers, if they respond to the yellow flag, there it is. If they respond to the yellow flag, it should not be a problem, should it? Just wonder whether that front left doesn't look a bit low. Maybe it's just the way that the sun is catching it. But clearly, that car ain't going anywhere. But if the drivers respond as they should to a waved yellow and slow down, it should be okay.
The fear is the car loses its brakes, gets a puncture. You know, it's still very much in a vulnerable position, that car. But yes, so close to the end, maybe they'll chance it. There is Dennis Lind then. So 1 minute and 40 to go. This should be the penultimate lap, I think.
Indeed. News from Bryn in the pits is that for Katie Milner, the team say it is a puncture. So maybe I wasn't having my old eyes deceive me. But why the car has stopped rather than limped to the pit lane, discuss. A drive-through penalty now for Sandy Mitchell for track limits to be converted to a 30-second penalty post-race. So because you can't serve the drive-through, you have it as a time penalty applied at the end. That might be what the Newbridge team are trying to do with Darren Turner, because if you haven't served it, at least you can argue, and then it can be put as a time penalty. But normally those penalties are unarguable against, but it's worth a punt.
Yeah, absolutely. 30 seconds is slightly longer than they would have spent in the pit lane. A drive through the pit lane is less than 30 seconds, so it's a bigger penalty for not serving it. But, well, we'll see. Anyway, Dennis Lind, 44 seconds left on the clock then. That Mitchell penalty, by the way, won't make a huge difference because he's last in GT3 anyway of those that are running on the lead lap. But it does mean that Ross Gunn could sort of wave him by now if he wanted to. Doesn't have to fight the fight too hard. 30 seconds on the clock, though, for Dennis Lind. Comes out through Paul Frere. It's actually going to be touch and go. This might even be the final lap, I think, for the Barwell Motorsport car. It's going to be tight, but I think with that Milner car still in a dangerous position, they're going to be in a bit of a hurry to get the checkered flag out. So
he could just back off, couldn't he? I mean,
yeah.
You don't need to go flat out. Take your time.
No, exactly. I think the time will just run out, I think. He's nice and early on the brakes. He's going very, very cautiously through the yellow flag zone at the final chicane. And so finally, Dennis Lind is going to do it. He's going to get a victory in the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. He slides in celebration out of the chicane, and he and Leo Machitsky, we think, are provisionally the championship leaders as they win at Spa-Francorchamps. Round number 4 of the British GT Championship goes to Barwell Motorsport, and Leo Machitsky is delighted.
Understandably so. Great character, Leo Machitsky, and finally Dennis Lind comes good. I know I get excited about him, but he's a spectacular driver to watch. He's very, very quick, and he's a good character as well. He's a real asset to British GT. No longer a Lamborghini factory driver, but Mark Lemmer decided he was exactly the right person to come into the championship for a full season, and Dennis has repaid the faith, hasn't he?
Darren Turner still hasn't served this penalty, clearly isn't going to now, so they're going to argue the toss after the race, and that means that, well, Jack Brown here is going to not win on the road, but might end up inheriting a victory afterwards once all is said and done with this penalty. More cars coming across the line. There goes Matt Cowley ahead of Andrew Gordon-Colebrook, so that is 4th and 5th in GT4. Gus Burton has already been through to finish 3rd, and that for Century Motorsport is another good result for the 57 car. They have been off the podium only once so far this year, and they can now add a 3rd place finish, a 3rd place finish to their 2 wins they already have.
Who'd be a steward, at the end of this race, because they have got a lot to look at now. There are obviously penalties that have been applied and not taken. There are things to review. There's evidence to get from cars, such as the onboard footage and data to be looked at. So there are quite a few things that are still to be investigated. There's a penalty that's been applied that's not been taken. So this story could rumble on, really. What time's your flight? Keep an eye on the British GT website, I think, for more. But yes, certainly one question mark's got to be over the Darren Turner car. Now that is being shown now with the little penalty mark next to it, suggesting they are going to, as he hasn't taken it, just apply it post-race. But seeing that the penalty could have been taken, does that get him into more hock with the stewards? There was time to serve it.
Yes, I'm trying to work out whether he's 30 seconds ahead of Gus Burton. It's tight, that, isn't it? 18, 20... No, yes, I think he is just about 30.5 seconds ahead of Gus Burton. So the significance of that is that if they give him a 30-second penalty, he'll only lose one place, and that will be to this car, the number 90 then of Jack Brown and Ashley Marshall. They're going to finish second on the road here at Spa. Ahead of them, Darren Turner has already taken the checkered flag, but owes us a drive-through penalty that he never served. So we think this will be the win for the number 90 Balf Motorsport McLaren then, as they head across the start-finish line then. A brilliant weekend all round, really, for this squad. Balf Motorsport's GT4 programme finally starting to pick up a bit of pace, and whilst the Rocket RJN McLarens have also been quick, they've been a bit more accident-prone and a bit more unfortunate, continuing there with Katie Milner retiring late in the race, whereas Balf have managed to avoid most of that trouble and may end up with a race win out of it.
Wait and see. The story will rumble on, won't it, before they get to the end of the night. So Leo Machitsky and Dennis Lind, the winners. Next week, Sandy Mitchell is with Leo Machitsky in the 24 hours here. But Dennis Lind's first British GT win. It's been in the post, but finally he's made good. And the beers will be on Dennis tonight after that. He'll be absolutely delighted. A race win, fastest lap from pole position. Triple whammy, and an excellent effort. It's a shame that we had all the dramas at the start, which of course affected the shape of the race, but equally we still had some very, very good racing all the way through and some good battles. And the provisional results, underline provisional, look like this.
Yes, no doubt really about Machitsky and Lind, the winners. Then they get their first victory in British GT together and move themselves into championship contention once more. Michael Igo and Phil Keane making the Lamborghini 1-2 for WPI Motorsport there in second, with the Proctors having a quiet second half of the race but managing to get themselves on the podium as well. Ross Gunn and Andrew Howard survived a penalty to finish fourth, whilst Adam Ballon and Sandy Mitchell were fifth. Then in GT4 it is provisionally Jack Brown and Ashley Marshall that take the victory for Balf Motorsport. Darren Turner and Matt Topham after that late penalty are second, ahead of Will Burns and Gus Burton, but not by a huge amount. Matt Cowley and Will Moore fourth for Academy. Then it was the second Century car, Gordon Colebrook and Chris Salkeld, with Rich Williams and Senan Fielding, the last car that was still running competitively at the end. So there is Dennis Lind then, and he will celebrate momentarily with Leo Machitsky there underneath the podium. Barwell Motorsport then, the 63 car that had such a disastrous time of it. In fact, the two cars that came to blows at turn one last time at Donington end up first and second today. They do still make a bit of contact though, look, because Dennis has opened the door into the side of the WPI car. That though, I think they can live with.
I reckon so. That's the only thing he's done wrong all race, I think. Just and it does show how tight the parking is. Modern cars get wider, you know. It's the same in a supermarket car park. There's always some gnome that parks next to you. There's loads of spaces. They always come and park next to you. Dennis Lind, brilliant job to win for the first time in British GT. There in the background, arriving is Ross Gunn, who of course ends up fourth overall, but third in the Pro-Am element of the class. So good job done by Ross Gunn, and the podiums will get underway shortly. But Dennis Lind just scarpered up the road, didn't he? Phil Keane, as you would expect, metronomic in his pace with the WPI car. So it is a win for Leo Machitsky and Dennis Lind. There is Dennis Lind, and he can tell all to Bryn.
Well, first of all, Dennis, your first ever win in British GT. Well done, congratulations.
Thank you. It wasn't too much working. Leo did most of the work, so I was just bringing the car back. I tried to get the fastest lap in the first 2 laps, and they didn't tell me if I got it or not. So,
Leo, while you're here as well, when you were watching Dennis and he came up behind those 3 GT4 cars, what were you thinking?
I wasn't watching. I couldn't watch. No, I did see that little moment. He took his time. I think obviously they had their own battle. Possibly the Mustang shouldn't have sent it down the inside again, but it is what it is. It's racing.
Dennis, what about you? Were you a bit worried at that moment, or was it all in control?
I had first row seats to the action, so I was pretty happy. I saw the Mustang coming, so I didn't really want to interfere. When you're alone on track and you don't really have to fight for anything, I don't want to mess up good TV or good battles. So yeah, I saw him coming and I thought, okay, fair move. If you want to go for it, go for it.
Well, the last round, Demon's been put to bed. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Well, very popular winners there, I think. Yes. Dennis Lind and Leo Machitsky. Great to have Leo back this year, and Dennis, as you've said, has become a bit of a household name within the championship over the last few years. And a flawless performance. Life was made a little easier for them by the fact that a couple of their expected rivals were out before we even got to the start of the race, really, but they still had to do the job. Dennis still had to stay out of trouble throughout his stint, and he did.
Yeah, I mean, he, again, knows his way around here. He knows the car because he spent a lot of time in GT3 spec Lamborghinis, and he put all of that together. Perfect job done.
So GT4, celebrations for Jack Brown and Ashley Marshall. If nothing else, it's a podium finish.
It is a win because the timing screen has updated, look.
Right, OK, so that penalty has been added post-race. I guess Newbridge are still intending to argue the fact if they can. But that means that provisionally it is the win for Jack Brown and Ashley Marshall, and Bryn Lucas is down there with them.
Ashley, while we wait for Jack to take his crash helmet off, what about that? A great win, wasn't it? Really well earned, but you had to fight for it really with Darren.
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously the Pro-Am cars are a little bit faster than us. And I think obviously from the opening stint we suffered quite a bit of damage. So that was a little bit tricky. Obviously we were hit coming out of La Source on lap 1 from the Lamborghini. So the tracking was out and then, yeah. But yeah, we're really happy. I think OEP won overall after the penalty, I'm not sure. So
yeah, Jack, just talking there quickly, a bit of damage to the car early on. How was it to drive?
Yeah, the throttle was actually stuck open, like 30%, so it was really tough. So definitely lost some time there. Really difficult to take home in the last 15-20 minutes. Really struggled. So just tried to keep it neat and tidy. So yeah, no, overall really good job. Really pleased with everything. So thank you.
Well done, podium time. Well done,
guys.
Back to you, Andy and David.
That's interesting then, David, because WPI were adamant that their car wasn't hurt in that contact, and yet Balf say it had quite a significant knock, and the throttle was sticking open, which ain't ideal.
No, and to cope with all of that, they did a very, very good job because that was a quick car and it was on the attack and it was involved in battles. You know, they didn't bail out of it and come and pit. They drove around the problems, and for relatively inexperienced drivers, that's an excellent effort.
Yes, and this battle, one of the highlights of the race, as Darren Turner caught up to Jack Brown, and we sort of expected him to get past him fairly easily, but that did not happen, and Jack really did put up a fight. Darren would eventually get through, but then exceeded track limits once too often and was handed a penalty. So it will be Jack and Ashley that take your GT4 race victory.
Lots of hard luck stories, though, aren't there? For example, you know, the Assetto Motorsport Ginetta, Speedworks Toyota, irrespective of all the cars damaged at the start. And you've got to feel for the Nearys because it was a late decision to come and do this race because of the result at Donington, because of how well they were going in the championship, and then it all unravels.
Yes, well, the Nearys, of course, will non-score, which means they're going to be now, once again, 30-odd points off the championship lead. So, yeah, just as they'd fought their way back into contention after some bad luck at the start of the season. So they have it all to do again. We've still got, though, we've had 4 races. There are 5 still to go. We're at Snetterton next for the first of our 2 double headers, then Alton Park for a double header, and then a 2-hour finale at Donington. So there is time for this to change. I mean, the amount of comers and goers that we've had in the first 4 events of the season, you'd imagine could be replicated again in the final 3 events, 5 races, especially those sprint race formats that are coming up shortly. They are always all action, those 1-hour sprint races, aren't they?
Absolutely, and you have a bad first race, pick up damage, you're in strive for the second if there's not a massive turnaround. And Snetterton is another circuit that delivers good racing, that switchback infield where you can be on the outside for one corner, the inside for the next, the outside for the one after that. It does generate good racing. So there the drivers will be making their way to the podium. There they are, and the podium ceremony about to get underway. Well, ceremonies, because there are, of course, lots of different classes, even within the 2 divisions of GT3 and GT4.
Yes, indeed. We'll start with the overall GT3 podium, plus the Silver AM winners as well, because they were in 3rd place overall. So that they'll get 2 trophies on their trip up there onto the podium. You can see the drivers gathered. And Lauren Granville there handing out the trophies. The drivers have to take the trophies onto the podium themselves as part of COVID protocols, but they do still at least get the moment to sit up on the stand up on the podium and celebrate. So the Proctors then, Lewis and Stuart Proctor, 3rd overall in GT3. They win the Silver AM category, which is new for 2021. No this sort of move to a more Pro-Am element in GT3 racing. So we have a Pro-Am and a Silver-Am class. Second place overall, of course, go to Michael Igoe and Phil Keane, but it's Dennis Lind who gets his first victory in British GT, paired up with Leo Machitsky, and they will move, if not into the championship lead, certainly very, very close to it. They will be enjoying this moment in the sunshine at Spa. That rain, David, never did come, did it?
No, it never looked likely, did it?
No.
It was about the one thing that we didn't get out of all of that. We had plenty of drama, plenty of controversy, plenty of talking points, and a great drive by Leo Machitsky and Dennis Lind.
Yes, so they have the Belgian flag raised above them as a mark of respect to Belgium, which, as we know, has been suffering from some really adverse weather of late. Some more heavy rain yesterday has affected certain parts of the country, we believe. Quite lucky actually here in the Spa-Francorchamps region. The champagne shower, though, altogether much more enjoyable shower, and Dennis Lind sticks around to celebrate. Leo Machitsky had no intention of doing so. I think he's saving that maybe for some celebrations later on this evening.
Yeah, as long as Dennis doesn't do that to beer tonight, that'll be absolutely fine. You can do it with champagne, but you don't want to waste good Belgian beer. We know that. Well done, Dennis. Great effort. First British GT win, and now a soaking from Leo Machitsky.
That was the plan, you see. He was waiting till his teammate had got rid of his, and that's a rookie error, that, from Dennis. He should know better. So they vacate the podium then, and it's prepared now for GT4. GT4 overall. Gus Burton then, of course, is back on the podium once again with Will Burns, having won twice already this year. They were already comfortable championship leaders, and they are still going to be comfortable championship leaders because the two cars that finished ahead of them were some way back in the points then. There are well, first of all, Darren Turner and Matt Topham were up there on the second step of the podium, and then Jack Brown and Ashley Marshall, who win in GT4 after that post-race penalty. In fairness, Turner and Topham don't seem too aggrieved at that. They're giving them a round of applause. So although they may try and fight the penalty afterwards, it looks as though they are sort of resigned to it.
I think they're just pleased to be in the results, aren't they, in part, because at one point you thought that car was going to be a casualty because it was oh so close to being wiped out with some of the other carnage at the start of the race.
Yeah, how Matt Topham kept himself out of that accident, I don't really know, because he was arriving on the scene at some speed. Of course, those at the back of the GT4 field are going quite quickly by the time they get to the start-finish line, and they're unsighted and visibility's low. So, yeah, Matt Topham, for that alone, deserves a podium. And then Darren Turner charging through, benefiting from their slightly shorter pit stop, of course, were able to move through and get the second place finish in the end. So we are hoping now to get the GT4 Pro-Am drivers up. There they go. So that is John Ferguson and Scott McKenna then, making their way up onto the podium. They didn't have a great race, but they were at least able to get themselves on the podium. And the GT4 Pro-Am category that did lose one or two over the course of the weekend, we still get a podium, though, for the top two teams. So that is it then from another dramatic round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship here at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. As I said, we're more or less halfway through the season now. The double headers begin next in another 2 weeks, the 7th and 8th of August. We're at the Snetterton 300 circuit in the southeast of England. Those double headers with 2 one-hour sprint races over the course of the day. Always really exciting, and they always have a strong bearing on the championship outcome. Congratulations to our winners then here today, Barwell Motorsport and Balf Motorsport, getting the wins in GT3 and GT4 respectively. It's been an entertaining 2 hours of racing here at Spa. We hope to see you back again next time as the British GT Championship heads to Snetterton.